These are some of the best upgrades that you can make to your shop and to your tools that will seriously level up your woodworking. I have compiled some of the best upgrades that I have ever made into this one compilation video so you don't miss a single one. If you'd like to check out any of these tools or upgrades, links in the description and that pinned comment to help you find them easier. Now, let's go. If you upgrade your table saw on a budget, you got to check out the VEVOR miter gauge. Now, I showed this in a video a while back, and of course, Outlaw Effect again, it sold out very fast. It should be coming back in stock any day now because it's been about 3 months. And typically lead time on these are 3 to 5 months when you see tools sell out, especially if they all sell out really fast. It takes the manufacturer about 3 to 5 months to get these things back in stock. So we should be seeing these coming back in stock anytime soon. Now, one of the great things about this miter gauge that I liked was the extendable fence and the micro adjustable stop block. I think this is one of the best values. I think it was right under $70 for this miter gauge. And if you don't know, that's a very, very good value because one of my other favorite miter gauges, the Inker V27, is about $85-ish and you don't get the fence. This one has the fence built in and it's extremely accurate, and it does have positive stops all the way around to 67, almost 70 degrees, or all the way to 70 degrees each way, so you can cut those miters. And again, it does have the flip down stop and that micro adjustable stop block, which is huge for dialing in your cuts to be exactly where you need them to be. This is one of the best value miter gauges on the market, bar none. There's some knockoffs out there as well. If VEVOR can have a knockoff, there's some knockoffs out there as well. So I'll link to those that look almost identical to this as well. And then of course you can't dismiss Bauer. Bauer come out with their own miter gauge. Mine had a slight issue where when you locked it at 0, it wasn't perfectly 90. However, on that review video, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of comments saying theirs was exactly 90 degrees. So maybe mine was just a fluke, but this is a very good value at about $35, $40. I think they raised the price after that video. I think it's $35 or $40 on that miter gauge. Even if it's $45, that's still a very good value because even with my minor issue, I was able to get 90-degree cuts, perfect 90-degree cuts every single time with that miter gauge. So if you're looking to upgrade your table saw on a budget, these are the two options I would tell you to pick, VEVOR or the Bauer. I think the VEVOR is slightly better because it does have that micro adjustable. I didn't have any issues as far as accuracy goes or anything like that. It's just a very good, well-made miter gauge. Absolutely most popular tools I shown on this channel in 2024 was the PowerTech crosscut sled from Amazon. This thing was very surprising at how good it was. Number one, it's easy to assemble. It only takes a few minutes to get everything ready to go. And you can cut it to fit your table saw. So you're gonna have that basically a zero clearance on the right side. Now, it's not a great option for like a job site saw, but for standard saws, this is a good option, especially for those who don't want to build the crosscut sled. This also comes with a stop block and it comes with a clamp so that you can clamp down small parts. I really love that feature of this crosscut sled. This sled also has a laminate top, and the actual sacrificial fence that you put in there has that laminate on there as well, so that's a nice touch. One of the greatest features of this crosscut sled, for one, it was easy to square up, so you could just do it with a standard square that fence up to your blade. It also comes out of the box. The fence is a square to the table, 90 degrees, which is a plus. It also will cut miters up to about 55 degrees, and the numbers on there are nice and bold, easy to read, especially for older eyes like me. I really appreciated that. This is a very well-made sled. It is MDF core, but it does have that laminate on there. I think it'll last a long time, and I think it's just a good value for what you're getting here, and that's likely one of the reasons it's one of the most popular tools in 2024. One thing that makes this stand out is the fence is an extruded aluminum fence, and then it has that sacrificial fence out of MDF with the laminate covering on it that you just slip in there. So if you cut that up, you could likely replace that. You could build your own, anything that you wanted to do. But because it has that extruded aluminum fence, it just makes it a really solid option. Let's check out this Dremel. This thing from Dremel might be one of the coolest pieces of kit that I've saw in quite a while. Now, this isn't for everyone. Not every woodworker is going to run out and buy this, but I think there is a very good use case or use cases for this that a lot of people are going to enjoy, especially at this price. This is an entire tool kit. In other words, everything you need to work with this is included. Including the entire case turns into a work surface, and it even has these rubber feet built in. They're on the bottom or on either side, so that when you do expand this open, it doesn't slip and slide around on you. Nice stable surface. This is Dremel's multi-saw kit, and what included in this is a way to cut smaller parts accurately every single time. For one, this is very simple to use and it's compact, so you'll be able to store it in a very small space. I think this might be one of the perfect saw kits if you have a laser or you're making other small items like birdhouses, picture frames, all that kind of stuff, because this will replace a big miter saw for a lot less money, and you'll be able to cut a lot of stuff with this. First up, this expands. So you notice each wing folds out and up, or up and out, and then it locks into place on each side. Now I think this is perfect for somebody in very small spaces or small shops or apartments and things like that. But no matter what size shop you have, you may find a use for this specifically for trim, 3/4 inch material, or especially lasers. I think this is the perfect little saw for people who have lasers and doing custom work because there's so much here packed in. Let me show you. This includes everything you need. The saw, the battery, the charger, and all the accessories to make all of these cool cuts. It'll do 4 different styles of cuts as well. You can do standard cross cuts, you can do bevel cuts, you can do miter cuts, and then of course you can use the 2x4 adapter to cut 2x4s. Let me show you how this works. Now I don't think this is for everybody, but I do think that it's a very useful tool for those, again, in small spaces. Not use this for various different cuts here. As you can see, it'll cut up to 3/4 inch piece material. Anything over that's not gonna fit under this guide rail, but if you do wanna cut a 2x4, it does have that little adapter that just clamps on, and that lets you cut all the way around the board. In other words, you're gonna cut half, flip it over, cut the other half, and if you use that as a guide, you'll get a very accurate cut as you see here. I think that's kind of a neat idea that they threw in there because, again, if you're in a very small space, you don't have access to a bigger saw, at least it gives you the option to cut 2x4s. For whatever reason. Now the kit itself is very interesting because it does give you this rail that this saw rides in, so you get consistent cuts every time. It doesn't matter if you're doing anything between 0 and 45, but I like that 90-degree cut the best. I think it's just a good use case for just cutting things really fast. It does have a laser line on the saw, so you're able to line that up with your marks, so you can get those consistent cuts as well. It does include 2 clamps. There are 2 T-tracks, one on each side that these clamps will go on each side of the cut, and you can clamp both sides of the material down if you so chose. And then the clamp is also used to cut 2x4s. This workbase here is very stable. It's not going to go anywhere. It doesn't give or anything like that. And for longer material, they even include this little mini sawhorse. I think it's just genius. Just sets out there to get some extra support on those longer pieces. Now this did really well cutting pine and spruce. On plywood, I think you need a higher tooth count blade. This is a 20 tooth count. I would pick up a higher tooth count blade if you're going to be cutting more finer materials, if you want a finer cut. It does a lot of splintering on thick 3/4 inch plywood, but on this little 1/8 inch plywood like you would use at the laser, the cut was really nice and clean. There's no issues there. So it just depends on what material you're cutting, but that goes for any saw. The higher the tooth count, the better, cleaner cut, especially you're going to get on veneers like plywood and things like that. This 1/8 inch cut very clean. I was quite impressed. Now there are 2 blue blocks under there for cutting thinner material bevel cut. So if you're going to bevel cut like this 1/8 inch stuff, you'll use those blocks to get that material lifted up a little bit, but you don't need those if you're cutting 3/4 inch stock. The miter gauge on the kit itself goes from 0 to 45. There's positive stops at 0 and at 45, none in between. It's very easy to adjust. And then cutting with the saw, it has plenty of power to cut this thinner stuff. You're not going to have any issues there. I think this little 12-volt tool is probably the perfect little size for this because it keeps it compact and has the power you're going to need. This also comes with an edge guide similar to what we saw on the Cobalt saw. So if you want to rip down thin strips, you can do that with this saw as well. I think the main selling point of this, especially if you're doing those smaller projects, is you have a miter saw in a box for a very reasonable price. At the time of this filming, 149 bucks for this entire kit. Very easily to store, very easy to transport. It might be the solution for you. It might not. Let me know in the comments. In the top 5 of the most popular products I've shown on the channel are these positioning squares. If you don't have a set of these, they're absolutely game changers if you build anything that's square. And it doesn't matter if that's cabinets or if it's end tables or anything. Anything you're putting 2 pieces together square and you just need to hold them together. While you fasten them together, put a dowel in, put a domino in, put a pocket hole screw in, it doesn't really matter. These are great because you can clamp these to either side and then it stays square. It holds everything in position and keeps it square, hence positioning squares or 90-degree positioning squares. You actually get a variety pack that has various sizes depending on what you're working on. Not only can you use these to hold 90-degree 2 pieces together, but I also use these to help position things. Like when I was building my tool cart, I just clamped these to the cart and I slid the shelf in there so that it holds the shelf in position while I fasten it that way. They're just extremely handy to have. I think everybody should have a set in their shop, and a lot of you agree because it's one of the most popular products from Amazon this year. You got to check this out. I had no idea this existed, and it could be just what you've been looking for to upgrade your table saw. This is the Rockler small part sled. Out of the box, extremely easy to set up. You literally pull it out of the box there. You're going to put a miter bar on there. This is an aluminum miter bar, should fit any 3/4 inch size miter slot. And there's adjustment screws, little nylon screws in there that you can adjust any slop that might be there to fit your miter slot. Now this will also fit on job site saws, not just a cabinet saw. As you see here, sitting on this DeWalt 8 1/4 saw, it actually fits on these perfect. Perfect. So if you're cutting a lot of small parts, especially on these small saws, this might be a must-have. Now the first thing you're going to do once you get the miter bar bolted on there, you want to make sure you put the blade guard on. The blade guard sticks off the back and that prevents you from accidentally cutting your hand with that blade. This is a must. You must put this on there. It's a rule. Outlaw rule number 304. You also want to make sure that your blade isn't too high because, especially on saw stops, you don't want to hit that aluminum because if your hand is touching the aluminum and the blade touches the aluminum, yeah, you triggered the saw stop. Also, that's what's holding the two parts together once you make the cut. But if you ensure that the blade's not too high, you're going to make that first pass. You're cutting a zero clearance into your sled. From there, there's a piece of MDF that comes with it that slides into a groove. You're going to put that in there, put 2 screws in it because from the bottom, that's going to hold that in place. Then you're going to make another cut. You could probably get away with putting the MDF in there and making 1 cut instead of 2, but they say 2, so I did. Now there is enough of this MDF left, so if you booger this up in some way or you change blades and you need a thicker blade or a thinner blade and you want a different zero clearance, then there's enough there to reset it. Once that's done, there's a piece of composite material here. It says Rockler on it. You're going to push that up against the blade and screw in 2 screws, and that gives you the zero clearance. That zero clearance is going to help prevent tear out. From there, I'll run it through one more time just to kind of shave off anything that might be touching on that composite. It also comes with this miter stop. It's just a miter bar that expands when you screw it down. Prevents you from pushing this sled too far so that you don't expose the blade. That's also a rule. We'll call that rule 303. You also get a composite T-track clamp. And the reason I keep calling this stuff composites is because none of it's aluminum except the T-tracks on there. So you should not cut into the T-tracks. This other composite material is just plastic. So even if you cut into this clamp, it's not going to hurt anything other than the clamp. But there is a clamp here for very, very small pieces. So if I'm cutting little pieces off and I can actually hold it down on the left, you can still use the clamp. But if you're comfortable holding it down, you can chop off small pieces like this. But once they get down to very, very small, you do not want your finger very close to the blade. Even this blade guard has a lip to kind of prevent your finger from getting up in there. I think this is genius because they kind of thought of everything here. The clamp, the zero clearance, the composite material, the blade guard, and it fits on basically any table saw with a standard 3/4 inch slot. This is one of those things that it's just great to have because what's going to happen is, and I have tried it, cutting very small pieces at the miter saw is very dangerous. I've actually broke this thumb. It still hurts. To this day, I can literally mash it right now and it hurts. I broke it 3 or 4 years ago because I was trying to cut a very small piece like a dummy at a miter saw. I knew it didn't feel right in the gut, but I still made the cut and it kicked back and it broke the thumb. It's not a place to make small parts. If you don't have a small handsaw or something that you can cut very small parts with, this is what you need, and it's better to have it and not need it, and need it and not have it. This made a major impact on the woodworking world in 2024 by coming up with a new way to do a dado stack. And that hasn't been done in a very long time. This one is even compliant with EU regulations, so if you do live in the EU, you can use this one because they fixed the problems you were having with the old ones, which you weren't supposed to be using. What they did was made this stack locking. In other words, all of these pieces lock together so you don't have any chance of your chipper blades flying forward and hitting any other blades, causing those teeth to come off. That was the main issue with previous style of dado blades. Not only that, it's just an all-around excellent blade. I think this is one of the better dado stacks made. I also have this Freud dado stack. I've had this one for years. This one, I think, it's just the way everything locks together. It's just much easier to put on and off the saw because you're not worried about where the chippers are moving and all that stuff. Everything's locked into place. And the overall performance of the blade works extremely well. With this dado stack, you can cut from 15/64 of an inch all the way to 13/16, so you get plenty of distance there to cut whatever size dados you're going to need. Because this is the first ever compliant with the EU regulations, this changes woodworking for a lot of people in those countries and overall in the US just because of how this works. It locks together. It's just easier to use than standard dado stacks, in my opinion, or just easier to set up. I just really love the innovation that was put into this new dado stack. Now let's talk about budget table saws. If you're a beginner or if you're on a budget and you want a table saw for your shop, I've got 3 options for you here that are absolutely amazing and they're extremely popular in 2025. First and foremost, let's talk about one of my favorites that I've recently reviewed, the Evolution table saw. This is a 10-inch table saw with a ton of features for $400, $399 actually. While it may not be the cheapest table saw I'm fixing to talk about, it does have the most features. It's absolutely genius on the stuff they've packed into this thing. First and foremost, it has a sliding table built in. So you don't have to have miter gauges. There's already one built in, or even a crosscut sled, because all you have to do is unlock it and use it to slide. It's absolutely awesome, and I haven't seen that on any other table saw under $1,500 because Festool makes one. It's a cordless version that does have a sliding, but it is about $1,500. This one's $400, and it has plenty of power to cut through anything you're going to be using it for, hardwoods, softwoods, anything like that. It does come with a multi-material blade. I do recommend picking up a different blade for woodworking if that's what you're going to be using it for, which most of you are. I've got some recommendations I'll drop in the description, but Evolution also sells a woodworking specific blade if you want to get theirs. This saw also features an outfeed support, and this is huge, especially for job site style saws, to be able to support that material on the back side of the saw to keep it from falling off. Now, I've shown some other accessories on the channel before to help with that. The bow extender fence. I also made some jigs to help with that, but this one has it built in, and that is absolutely massive. There are some saws on the market that have this, but very, very few, especially in this price range. And if you're cutting a lot of lumber by yourself, you don't want the wood falling off the backside because you have a tendency to reach over and try to grab it, and that can be dangerous. So I'm glad they included that with this saw. Now, a couple of things I've learned about the Evolution table saw since I showed it in the video a few weeks ago. Number one, it sold out very fast, which I knew it would. The outlaw effect was in full force. I even told you that it was going to be, just because of all the features packed in. When will it be back in stock is the question that I keep getting asked. I'm hearing June of 2025. So if you want one, you're gonna have to be patient with this one. But there's also more information that I've learned about this saw that I wasn't aware of in the beginning. They do sell an upgraded zero clearance throat plate for this saw. One of my minor quips with this saw was the throat plate had a little bit of flex in it, but Evolution does sell a throat plate that is reinforced. That's a zero clearance, so you wouldn't have any of those flexion issues. Next, for the budget level table saws, I've got 2 more here for you. First and foremost, the Skill. I think it's a fantastic value. It's usually $299 or less, so it's $100 less than the Evolution, and it comes with the stand that folds out. So if you're working in a small space and you don't want to have to spend the extra on a stand, this one comes included. This saw is extremely impressive, and since I first reviewed this table saw, they have upgraded the throat plate on it as well. It also has a little bit of flexion issue, but now that is gone because they have a much better, beefier throat plate in there. I think this is one of the best table saws under $300, bar none. It is a fantastic saw, has plenty of power, has everything you're gonna want in a table saw. That rack and pinion fence is just extremely adjustable, has plenty of rip capacity. It's just one of the best values and one of the most popular still in 2025. Now, I can't talk about budget level table saws without talking about the Hercules. I was seriously impressed by this because a couple of years ago, I went into a Harbor Freight and I looked at their table saw and I immediately dismissed it as not very good because of that fence. I hated the way they had that fence on there. Those style fences I just dislike greatly, vehemently. I don't like them. But they did upgrade it after I had looked at it like a year later or a few months later, and now it has the rack and pinion fence, and it's just an all-around great table saw. I reviewed this on the channel not that long ago and was extremely impressed by the power, by that fence, because it does have that rack and pinion fence. All 3 of these saws I mentioned today do have that rack and pinion. And of course, it does have plenty of power to cut through anything you're going to want, and it's extremely accurate. This one does not have a stand, but I think you can buy a stand separately if you needed it to, but for a compact style saw at this price point, I think it's a great value. First on the list, I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 5 on the Outlaw Effects sellout meter. I think this is going to sell out very fast. This is the Win miter gauge. This thing is absolutely awesome. I've never seen a miter gauge this good at this price point. It is seriously nice. First, out of the box, what you get is what you see here, plus you do get a bag of a little bit of extras. So you're getting a few of those spacer washers and some of those Allen keys that will adjust this miter gauge. This is one of the nicest Win tools I've had the pleasure of using, and I've used quite a few Win tools. I've been a big Win fan over the years. I've owned several of their tools. This thing is no exception to how nice it is. First, this knob right here is all metal. It's very hefty, gives this a nice weight to it, and it's knurled, kind of like a barbell is knurled, if you know what that feels like. It's just a nice knurling on there. And then, of course, the adjustment knob on the back, the same knurling as well. Just well done. Just well done. One of my favorite features of this miter gauge are all of these positive stops at the angles. And the way this works, you loosen this knob back here, you can move this out. So that means at any point between 0 and 60 degrees, this goes up to 60 degrees both ways, you can set miters. I love the fact that this gear tooth slides in there at the exact right angle, whether that's 0 or 45 or anywhere in between there and 60. They have various detents that you can use. When you get it set, you just tighten that back knob, snug the front knob, and you're off to the races. One great thing about this miter gauge, on the bottom it has this nice material that's not metal, so it's not going to scratch up your cast iron tops or even your aluminum tops or anything, whatever top you have on your table saw. And it does help everything glide nice and smooth. Feels like some type of UHMW plastic, and it's just nicely done overall. When you first get it, you slide it into your miter slot, and these 3 adjustment screws will tighten these little spacers and make it snug in the slot. You don't want any slop in there. You can just snug it up so that it's just snug enough it's not moving, but you can still slide it. And what's great about this miter gauge, it will fit on any standard 3/4 inch slot. So no matter if you have a job site style saw like you see here, or even a cabinet saw like I'm using here, it's going to work in those slots. And you can adjust it to fit perfectly with those little spacers. This comes with 2 bolts and nuts right here on the fence that you can remove. Then you can just use this as a miter gauge, or you can use those bolts to attach a faux fence so that you'll have longer material support if you needed that. Now, when using this at the table saw, it ain't no good if it ain't square, and this thing cut exactly, perfectly square, 90 degrees, multiple different times I've tried it. It's dead on. When you set this thing at 0, dead accurate. You don't have to worry about the accuracy here. And then when I moved it to 45 and cut a 45-degree angle, dead accurate again. You can't get better than that. At this price point, this is going to sell out because it's that good. This is one of those I put a 5 out of 5 star on. It's just an absolutely amazing tool from Win, and I'm glad they posted it. And this I had no idea existed until just a few weeks ago. I think this is fairly new. Who has a shop vac and your shop vac hose never fits anything in the shop? It won't fit your sander, it doesn't fit your router, it doesn't fit your track saw. Really the only thing it'll plug up to is maybe your table saw, but then sometimes that's even probably doesn't. This will fix your wagon. This is a hose adapter kit, and it comes with several different pieces that will adapt to a bunch of different tools. And we're talking about we can take it and plug it into our shop vac with this end, and then the other end has those adapters on there that will snap in and out so you can change them out quickly, but it will adapt to your sander, your router, your track saw, and a bunch of other tools, especially for the smaller tools. This is a lifesaver, and it'll collect all that dust for you. Don't make a mess. It's just a good tool to have, and again, it's not one of those things that's going to break the bank. Because of everything you're getting with it and how well it works, I think this is one of the better values out there for dust collection if you just have a shop vac and you want to turn it into a semi-type dust extractor type setup. Dust extractors are good for smaller tools, dust collectors for bigger tools. That's why I say dust extractor light. This is called Lightning Lock. Carbon Method sent these over for me to review, and oh my goodness, do they work. First, they will connect to any of your tools. They have connections to most any tool that you're going to have. I've got one on my table saw, one on my planer, and one on my jointer, one for the bandsaw, one for the router table that I made. You can screw it onto the back. These are extremely cool because if you're like me and you're in a small shop and you have a flex hose that you're just changing from tool to tool, or you have one dust collector that you're using with multiple tools, it's very easy and very fast to get dust collection connected to each one of those because of these magnetic connections. And another thing that's great is they independently rotate from each other, so you don't have to worry about the hose getting kinked up or anything like that. If you're going to add these to your dust collection, you might as well pick up a pack of these bench nuts, because why not? By far one of the best budget picks for Forstner bits that I've ever used, and I have had this set for years now. It's one of my first sets of Forstner bits that I ever bought, and this is the Irwin set. I think this set is perfect for beginners, especially if you're on a budget. You just need some really good drill bits for doing what Forstner bits do, which we'll talk about. But these are extremely well. They hold their edge well. They drill nice clean holes. This is an 8-piece set, or you can pick up the 14-piece set. I'll link to both, but I think if you're just getting started, this one's going to do you well. Now, a Forstner bit is really good at drilling extremely clean holes, especially if you're not going to drill all the way through. But even if you are drilling all the way through, as you see here, there's minimal tear out on the back side of this. And a quick tip on how to prevent that is just support it with a scrap piece underneath what you're drilling through, and you'll get a nice clean hole through and through. The edges are going to be nice and clean, but if you're just doing a flat bottom hole, if you need to put a dowel in, or when I was building my dog kennel, I was embedding rebar in there for the bars on the dog kennel. It's really great for those because they're really nice, clean holes. Everything looks nice. These bits are some of the best value bits on the market. If you don't have some, you definitely should check these out. Another thing about these is they extract those chips as they go, so it's very rare these get clogged up. Because of how they're designed, you see here I'm bored through this pine with no problem. It's not clogging up. Everything drills nice and fast and, again, clean. Tool organization and storage, and there's a bunch of ways to do this. You can make your own or you can buy it. There's, I guess, 2 ways to do it. But there's a bunch of different options here to store and keep your tools organized, and that's where the efficiency comes in. Because if you always know where to grab your tools, where they're located, you'll be able to work faster. And I know a lot of people are on time crunches. They're trying to balance their family life with their work life, with their side woodworking business, and time really is of the essence. So looking for a tool for 20 minutes wastes so much time. If you know where it's at, it makes your life much easier. Here's what I'm using. I love this clamp storage. This is from Rockler. You can hold different styles. In other words, you buy the different ones, either pipe clamps, parallel clamps, or F-style clamps. You can also build your own. I've built some that I put right here on the end of the workstation and really just cut those out of a CNC, but you can do it with a jigsaw or anything else like that. Just making clamp racks makes your life easier because you know where your clamps are, you can access them, and then you can store them out of the way because you know if you start collecting a bunch of clamps, those things start piling up and they really do get in the way. Another good option is to add a tool wall to your shop. A lot of people love French cleats. Those work extremely well. Then you can build any size piece that you need to hold the tools or the parts and pieces that you need. I went with OmniWall. We partnered on a video. There's a whole video on how to install this stuff. I really like this set. There is places for your drills, there's shelves for your batteries and chargers, and just a whole basically organization system that you can put into your shop, including socket holders and all kinds of stuff. But it is a little pricey, so I'll steer a lot of people away from this. So if you want to build your own, it's a good option to do that and get your tools up where you can see them. They're easy to access. Another option for storage are toolboxes you can buy at the big box stores. I bought this at Home Depot. This is called a Husky. There's a video on me assembling this. This is a Husky hutch, and it comes with one side cabinet, and I purchased another side cabinet to match. And this is what I'm doing with mine. In one side, I've got paints and glues all stored in there. Yep, that's a pretty good way to store those. On the other side, I have my cordless tools stored on the top, and then down on the bottom, I have lumber storage, scrap wood down there. Now the drawers is really where I'm able to stay organized, and this was kind of my goal of like 2021 to get organized. Now I'm using these little small boxes are on Amazon. I'll link to those. They are very inexpensive, and they're perfect for holding small parts and odds and ends. You get like 32 boxes for like, I don't know, not a lot of money, less than $30, right around $30. And this really helps you stay organized. My set of Tecton wrenches here came with these organizers, and that's really handy to keep those all in one spot. The little small parts organizers are also perfect for tools or even loose sockets, whatever you got to store, wrenches, pliers, anything. But I'm not without my junk drawers. I have a few down here that just collect random stuff, so just be cautious about stuffing too much in drawers. I'm guilty of that myself. RYOBI storage is on another level because they're doing some things that a lot of other brands are not doing. We'll talk about it. First, they just keep coming out with more and more storage options. So depending on what you're needing to sort out, store, organize, anything like that, they've probably got a solution for you, including small parts, as well as this brand new little jewel here. It has trays that slide in and out. It has a very unique feature too, where you can lock these drawers in there so they don't come out. 3 different drawers. This does have the link pattern on the top, bottom, and the back, so you can even do the wall mount, which the wall mount storage is on another level. I've been adding more and more of this to my shop over the last few months because it just helps things stay organized. I have a drill and charger organizing station that is awesome, has a lot of room for different storage, including a shelf on top, the drill holders on the bottom, and then the shelves in the middle. But the wall storage is what I really, really like, especially being able to sort my 40 volt and 18 volt batteries where I can find them easier. There's a small parts organizer that has a little dropout trays to keep small bolts, nuts, and things like that sorted. There's even different hooks available to let you hang up different tools and things like that. They have cabinets that you can hang on the wall. And one of the best sounding job site radios that I have ever heard, super loud, really nice bass, and that's the RYOBI Link radio. It's a fantastic Bluetooth option if you need some jams in your shop. Number 5 on the list. Look, I've got a bunch of videos on storage and PACKOUT versus Flex versus Klein Mod Box. For my money, for what I'm going to talk about is why I chose and still stick with PACKOUT. However, the Tough Built system will probably give them a run for their money, but I think there's something that's going to set Milwaukee apart here. Number one, they're well made. You can throw these things around. They're just well made boxes, and a lot of people think they're overpriced plastic boxes. Comment below if you think so. I'm okay with that. I think they're nice. I think they're well made, and I use this word all the time, but it's kind of like Festool. Milwaukee is a system.
A system?
Yeah, a system. So if you buy into this system, you know what you're getting. Everything's going to interwork with each other, and it's just well made. Now, one complaint is they don't have a whole lot of OEM parts or accessories yet. I think they're still coming with more as time goes on. But the one thing they do have is a very strong community of makers who make things for the PACKOUT. Case in point, I bought this 3D printer because I saw this insert for the 5-in-1 drill. And this is a good drill to have in the shop as well, but it keeps everything nice and organized. And I was able to print that on my 3D printer. Or you can buy these inserts from Etsy from people who have already printed them, who are authorized sellers of the guy who's making these designs, Jonah Pope Designs. There's so many options for the PACKOUT that I like this bit storage here. I printed this in white and black just because I could. I liked it, but it stores all my drills and my little driver bits and things like that. I even have room for more, so that's pretty cool. It all fits in this nice little package. Remember the sander? He's got a design that fits the sander with the sandpaper. And there's a little trick on the sandpaper. This is pretty good mesh paper, but if you don't want to buy it, you can literally just trace around a piece and or the head of the sander and cut it out of whatever sandpaper you're using. But I like their regular sandpaper. One of the main reasons I'm sticking with PACKOUT, again, other than the maker community being able to buy the aftermarket stuff to go in there, you can also buy Kaizen foam. Cut that out if you don't want 3D printed stuff. The Kaizen foam will probably be better if you're transporting your tools because it gets a little softer than this hard plastic inserts. But the main reason I stick with them is because I like their wall storage setup. I've got a wall storage setup right behind you there. It's where I can keep my batteries there on that storage. It's literally just a plate you buy, you mount that to the wall, and then you can click in all of your storage, your batteries, anything you want. And you can just keep stacking on this for as long as you want to, I suppose. But I like that system. And another thing I like about the PACKOUT is the rolling storage box. There's a 3-drawer and a 2-drawer. I think they even got some more drawers they've released recently. But I like that little setup because I can roll it around the shop. It's got a little worktop on top of it. I don't really use it for a worktop. I'm able to put my drills and drivers and things on top, keep those right beside me as I'm working around the shop on different projects and stuff. I think that's a nice little setup for a shop setting. I also bought their first aid kit. And it's just literally first aid supplies in a PACKOUT, but it's handy and I like it. I got 2 Milwaukee tools that are honorable mentions here. They just didn't make my top 5. They may make yours. Next up is this little gem. Now we're going to use this clamping kit that we just put together, and I showed you how to use it to actually show you how this can be super handy in your shop. This is called an AccuBurr Junior. Now, if you're into woodworking, you probably should have some card scrapers laying around the shop because they're very inexpensive and they're very useful to have. We sell these on faithvalleytools.com. You can check these out. There's many other places to get them. I'll drop a link to ours. You can get these square versions or even a juice groove version to get the burn marks out of your juice grooves is what that's for. But for the square version, a lot of times you just need to kind of shave off the surface of your material. Maybe you're just trying to get it to the perfect thickness. Maybe you're trying to remove some burn marks, sanding marks, whatever you need to use this for. This is a good little option for you, and they're kind of hard to sharpen. It's one of the most difficult things I ever tried to do was sharpen one of these until I got this. First thing you need to do when you get a card scraper is put a burr on the end of it. And all that's doing is basically kind of turning a hook or a J shape on the edge of that card scraper. Because when you first get it, it's just a flat piece of metal. And you can kind of try to scrape on a piece of wood all day. It's just gonna kind of make a little bit of sawdust. But what you're wanting to do is shave the wood. And so when you put that little burr on there, then it's gonna be able to do that. But to get that little burr on there can be difficult in some cases. But using this is extremely simple. Now I'm just gonna use a couple of hand screw clamps and clamp those down to my jig, and I'm just gonna use this match foot clamp to clamp it all down. And then you're gonna see how easy this is. Now there's AccuBurr versions out there without these little handles, but I'm telling you right now, if you buy one, make sure you get the one with the handles. Makes your life a lot easier. Doesn't seem like it would, but it makes a huge difference. There's actually 3 grooves in here depending on the hook that you're looking for. Make sure you've got it clamped securely so it doesn't move on you. Push away from you about 5 times, pull towards you once or twice. That's it. It's done. Then you should be able to feel a little bit of a burr on your card scraper or your cabinet scraper, depending on what you call them. It shouldn't be a very large hook. You're looking for a kind of a minor feeling hook. Once you get that, take this card scraper and just start shaving away at the wood. Now, depending on the roughness of the wood will probably depend on how much shavings you're getting or the angle that you're holding it. There's a whole bunch to it. Now I was able to get some pretty wispy curls coming off the walnut, and then I put this in there. I can't remember the species of wood this is, but it had a little bit of a rough finish, as you see, a little burn marks, things like that. This card scraper cleans it right up, and it's just a super smooth. You can even see a little bit of a sheen on there when we're done. These things are absolutely handy, and if you have card scrapers or you're thinking about getting some for the shop, you must get one of these. AccuBurrs, it's gonna make your life extremely easy. They're very easy. And it's very easy to touch these up using this AccuBurr once you've got the burr on. Next up, one of the most budget-friendly and most popular tape measures I've ever shown on the channel, is still extremely popular here in 2025, is the Fast Cap Lefty Righty. You guys love this tape measure, and so do I. Let me show you why. First and foremost, the design of this tape measure is absolutely genius, and the price is right there genius too. It's less than $10. Less than $10 for this tape measure, and it's one of the best tape measures you can buy in my opinion. First and foremost, really nice springy belt clip so you can hook it on your belt or in your pocket or anything like that. I like how the blade is recessed, and so that when you drop it, because we drop tape measures, at least it has much less of a chance of damaging the end of that blade, causing inaccuracies. It also has a little button there on the bottom, and what that does is stop the tape measure. So when you push it out, if you push the button, it'll keep it from rolling in. Of course, it has a lock like every other tape measure. It has a place you can write measurements or anything else on the face as well. It also has a pencil sharpener built into the back, and it's a nice rubberized coating, so if you do drop it, shouldn't have any issues. But the star of the show on this tape measure is the blade itself. It is a lefty-righty, meaning no matter which way you turn it, you're going to be able to see your numbers on either side. Also, if you look closely at the blade, you can see it has increments spelled out on there. The 1 is 1/16, the 3 is 3/16, but also you get the 1/8, the 1/4, 5/16, 3/8, all the way to 15/16 on every inch. And this is where this tape measure shines, because if you're new to woodworking, or if you just don't remember what each little mark is, this spells it out for you. And even if you are familiar with it, it lessens the likelihood that you're going to make a mistake, because it's just easier to remember versus the 3/8 mark for some people. I love this tape measure, and so do many, many others. This is one of the most popular things we've shown on the channel ever. The next hidden gem, if you're in a small shop, you're going to love this. This is the Cobalt Portable Workbench. Now there's a few things that make this workbench extremely nice. For one, the price, less than $100. It has several different ways that you can clamp things down, including these slotted holes that you can use your standard grip clamps or squeeze clamps on. That way you can clamp your stock down and work on it. It also has these 3/4 inch dog holes, so if you have dog accessories, you can drop those in there. I've got these. You can see I'm clamping the board with this one. Works extremely well. It also has built into the tabletop small parts trays for screws, bolts, nuts, things like that if you're working on a project. One thing I love about this thing is it's not very heavy. It's actually quite light for what you're getting, but it will hold up to 1,000 pounds if you get a single one of these. If you stack 2 together, they say 2,000 pound capacity. It also has increments on each side. On one side it's metric, on the other side it's in imperial. So no matter whichever camp you're in, you can measure things using the table, if that's what you do. I'm not sure how useful that is, but I know it's kind of a good rough guide if you're just trying to rough things out. It's kind of handy to have. It has a nice little safety pin here that locks this leg in so it won't move until you pull that pin out. and then you can start unfolding, and it even tells you open one, close one. That way it lets you know which one you're supposed to open and close first. I think that's pretty cool. Your total work surface here is 34 inches by 23 and just under a half. Looks like 7/16 of an inch. So a really good solid surface here. I think this is the perfect like portable miter saw station. If you're in a small shop, take this out, set your miter saw on it, and you can also set the miter saw down and then have all these clamping capabilities so you can build your projects on it. Really nice flat top. It's the way to go. If it can be mobile, make it mobile. One of the first things I built for my shop was a mobile tool cart for my planer to be able to move it around. Later, I built a new cart to hold my planer and my jointer as well as several other tools, and it is also mobile, so you can move it around wherever you need it. That makes a big difference in small shops because you can move things out of the way or outside or out in the middle of the floor or anywhere you need to actually get the work done. And then you can store it out of the way when you're done. Also, mobile bases for other tools like bandsaws. I bought a Win one first. I don't really recommend that one. It kind of failed on me. But I did wind up upgrading to a Grizzly brand, and it works very well. Make sure you get a good quality, read those reviews on those mobile carts that fit your bigger tools, because that will make a difference. But being able to move that in and out of the way has been huge. I can have a good sized bandsaw in the shop, but it doesn't take up a bunch of floor space, and if it's in the way, literally just roll it out of the way. And also the SawStop big old table saw is also on a mobile cart so that I can move that around the shop, because there's only about 3.5 feet between the garage door and the saw. So a lot of times I'll move it around over there on the other side of the workbench and use that to saw wood and etc. Use this as my outfeed table and still have enough room behind me that I can cut large sheet goods, etc. with the garage door closed. I also have this rolling 5-drawer mobile workstation that I bought from Milwaukee PACKOUT. You just move this around the shop. I like having that around when I'm building or working on something. I can just move that cart where I need it, but it's on wheels as well. If it can be on wheels, put it on wheels. Probably one of the coolest hidden gems at Lowe's is this little workbench, especially for small shops. I had zero idea this existed until I saw it online, and I knew I had to test it out because space is so important. If you're moving your tools in and out to work on them, this might be the perfect solution for you depending on what you're doing. For one, out of the box, super easy setup. Literally, you just drop these rolling feet on there. It has the casters already bolted on, so I appreciate that. There's 2 screws on each leg that you bolt on. After that, you're good to go. This does have a solid hardwood top, and there is a little catch right here to keep it from expanding when you don't want it to. You can roll this around. These casters are actually really nice, especially if you're having to roll this in and out, because I was rolling out in the grass. It worked just fine. I rolled it off of the driveway onto the sidewalk, no issues there. I think they went with the right size casters here so that it's actually mobile around the house. These are also locking casters, so you can lock them in place if you don't want it to roll. When you get ready to expand it, all you have to do is pop that catch up and then lift one side or the other. There's actually 2 handles there, and it's going to fold out into your workbench. That also includes a shelf on the bottom. You could actually leave it just like this if you so chose. When you are collapsing this, be cautious of this pinch point right there. There's a ton of warning labels right there because it could seriously do some damage, so make sure no kids are using this or anything like that, and you're aware of that pinch point. That's why these handles are there. That's where you should be collapsing and raising it. As far as raising it back up, very, very easy. Again, it comes right up. This thing is not overly heavy, although it is very sturdy when you have it all the way flat. If you're looking for a miter saw station, this might be the way to go. That's how I was using it. And then of course that shelf on the bottom, you can store extra tools or supplies or anything like that when you're building stuff. And of course, when you get ready to pack this up, you can easily convert it back to standing position. This is minimal floor space being taken up. And of course you can roll it and put it wherever you want it. I was using this for a miter saw station. However, you could also easily use this for an extra workspace if you're painting, finishing, anything like that, or even in a craft room or something like that, that you can put this up, put it away, or as a table to hold a laser or many other things that you need to, space to do that. But the main feature here is the fact that I can take up very little floor space, but also have a nice size work table. The work surface is 52 inches wide, 24 inches deep, so that's a really nice size table that folds up to basically almost nothing. The capacity of this workbench is 400 pounds on the top, so 2 of me. And then on the bottom is 300 pounds. So you're getting plenty of capacity here to do most any project you're gonna want to do on a work table like this. My only real complaint about this design is I don't think it would make a perfect workbench because it's not completely flat. There is a slight arch here in the top because of this design. So you could work on one side. This side is completely flat. This side is completely flat. So I could set my miter saw on one side and work on the other side or whatever I needed to. It's just not an optimal workbench. Like if you're gonna be building projects on it. I think the one we showed previously would make a better workbench, but this would make a fine assembly table so long as it's smaller type projects or a miter saw station that you're rolling in and out. I think it'd be fine for that. But just know that this, at least this one I got, is not completely flat. It is slightly arched here where they join together. Is that a deal breaker? Let me know. I've been very excited about this ever since they pre-announced this a couple of months ago, and that is their folding workbench. Now, if you're in a small space, maybe you're in a craft room, a garage, or anything like that, and you just need a work surface that you can fold up and down and get it out of the way, this could be the answer, because soft close, which is absolutely amazing, pushes flat against the wall. It still leaves a shelf on top so that you can put your other things on there like pencils or saved glasses, whatever you need to keep there. Now I have this mounted at standing desk height because when I'm working out, I actually have my workout plan right here. I like to keep it right here where I can check off whatever I'm doing. I like having this at a standing desk height, but you can mount it anywhere you want. Now the great thing about this is it'll hold up to 300 pounds. It's very, very sturdy so long as you make sure you mount it correctly. And speaking of mounting it, it took me less than 10 minutes coming out of the box to assemble this and mount it to the wall. Probably about 5 or 6 minutes. A very fast setup. It does come with everything you need to mount it to the wall. I have this one mounted into studs. It's rock solid. And I love the fact that it's just a soft close. There is a safety pin that comes with this so that when it's in the fully extended part, you can pin that and it won't collapse on you without you taking that pin out, so you can't accidentally bump that. It's a really good safety feature. This is solid hardwood top. It's flat as flat gets, so if you need to assemble things or anything like that, this would be a good little assembly table for you. The main thing, the reason I wanted this as soon as I saw it was exactly for this space. I don't need a table up all the time. It would be in the way a little bit, but because I can collapse it down, it gets out of the way. I can still access anything I need to here. It pushes flat against the wall, virtually taking up about 5 or 6 inches max away from the wall. And then when I do need it, which is fairly regularly, fold it out. I've got a nice work surface or desk or whatever you need. This thing is fantastic. Link in the description. Really is cool. And yes, I did add more link stuff recently. You've got to check out these bench nuts. These things are absolutely awesome. If you're in a shop, you're gonna want a set of these. They come in an 8-pack. These are made out of high quality closed cell foam. And the way they work is simple. You set them on the bench and they grip whatever you're gonna put on top of it. You can see me standing on a set of these. They compress just a little bit. I weigh 205 pounds unless I ate apple pie, and I did yesterday. So I may weigh a little over 205, and you can see they're not just collapsing under my weight. They are supporting it. And the great thing is, like if you lay a sheet of plywood on these things, it just grips to it. And not only heavy stuff, if you're working with lighter stuff like this piece of leopard wood you see here, it grips to that as well. And it gets it up and off the surface, so if you're routing or sanding or anything like that, it's going to keep that board from moving around while giving it some support. And what's great is even if you do cut into these or hit them with a blade or a bit, it's not going to damage your tool because they're just foam. Great uses for these are obviously sanding, routing. What I like to do when I use a track saw to break down sheet goods like this piece of plywood, I'll elevate that up off the bench using bench cookies or these bench nuts now. That way I get it up off the next surface so I don't cut into it. I've been doing that for a very long time and it works extremely well. These come in an 8-pack for 20 bucks. You're not gonna beat that price for a nice accessory. Carver Method sent these over for me to check out and quite impressed. One of the upgrades that I wish I had done a long time ago before I did it was lumber racks. If you're a woodworker, you're gonna have lumber, even if you have scrap wood or scrap pieces. These lumber racks are fantastic. I almost said lumberjacks. My wife's old alma mater high school was lumberjacks. First, these things are super easy to put up, and they're like the Bora Speed Horses. These are Bora racks too. They just make really good stuff. They're very easy to install. Literally just driving screws into a stud. Make sure you get it into a stud because you're going to be putting weight on these. And then you can load them up. I have one rack stacked full of walnut, purple heart, cherry, and some other woods that is just rock solid. It keeps everything nice and organized. It keeps everything nice and flat, which I was worried about because there's only 2 poles. I thought they would sag in the middle. They don't. Everything works nice. And then kind of my scrap wood rack is right here above me. I have several other pieces up there, little bits and pieces and different widths and things like that. Main thing is it just keeps everything nice and organized and up and out of my way. So when I do need it, I can get up there and get the lumber that I need down. but when I don't need it, I'm not tripping over it and it's just causing a mess in the shop. That's why I love these. I think they're fantastic, especially at the prices they charge for them. It's just a no-brainer. Budget-friendly parallel clamps like you've never seen before, especially at this price. Now, Mike Taylor, longtime friend of the channel, sent these over for me to review, and I'm glad he did because I'm seriously impressed with what you get for this price point. And that's where these are going to outdo most anything you're going to see in parallel clamps on the price. But they're also very capable, and you get a lot for your money here. First and foremost, these are either light duty or medium duty parallel clamps. I wasn't aware that this was a thing, like you could buy lighter duty versus heavy duty. Now, if you compare these in price to some of the more popular brands, like the Bessie at about $50 or the Jet at about $80 each, these Tay-Tool parallel clamps are quite a steal. But there is a little bit of a difference here in what you're getting. Now we'll talk about the light duty clamps first. Now these are absolutely parallel clamps, so you get that 90-degree jaw. And one thing that I find very interesting here is the handle itself. Now, if you watch the channel, you know that Jorgensen makes some of my favorite F-style or bar-style clamps. And I absolutely love the handles that come on these. And these look like they come out of the same factory. So they are very, very similar to those. If not exactly the same, you can tell me if there's any difference other than the label there. They feel and look the same. They're just really nice handles on these lighter duty clamps. They also have the textured bar so that this clamp doesn't fall down on your hands. That has been an issue with some of the other brand parallel clamps that I've reviewed before. I hate that when this jaw falls and hits your hand. It's just a pain. For real. Now the jaws on these are steel reinforced and they have a nylon cover to prevent marring and things like that. Now where these differ from the Bessie and the Jet are, one, price, but also these are light duty. So lighter pressure clamps. So 330 pounds of clamping pressure, plenty for gluing up small panels and small projects or casework, cabinets, things like that, boxes, that sort of thing. These are going to be perfect for that. And you can buy these in a kit and get all 8 of these for just over $100 at the time of this filming. Now you do get 3 1/8 inches of clamping depth here in these jaws, and the jaw can be removed and flipped around so you can make these spreader clamps. For the price these are, I think this is a very good value, especially on these light duty clamps. You can also pick up this medium duty set, and this kit actually comes with some accessories that are very, very handy, which we'll talk about. But the clamp itself, again, the jaw will not fall and crash into your hand. These are a little more robust than that light duty, and they're very similar as far as the bar goes to what you would see on the Bessie. You see the Bessie here on top, the medium duty on the bottom. Very, very similar bar on these. Now you do get the steel reinforced jaw, very much like the light duty, but it's a little bit beefier here. It just depends on the task you're looking for. You do get 1 full inch of travel here with this screw. This clamp can also be reversed. You can take off this stop, reverse the head, and use it as a spreader as well. These clamps have 880 pounds of pressure, should be adequate for most of your glue ups. And the price point on these are very good as well. These are $25 a piece if you buy them individually versus the $50-ish on the Bessie. Now this is where the magic happens. If you decide to go with the kit on the medium duty clamps, what you're going to get are 4 clamping bridges. If you've ever made panels, you know when you start applying pressure, sometimes it wants to buck up or try to move on you on the ends of these boards. So a lot of people use cauls to fix that, but these new clamping bridges are the way to go. If you just set one on the top, one on the bottom, and then you pair that with your light duty clamps, then you're able to get a perfectly flat panel when you glue up. Now when we put these 2 boards in there, applied a little glue with the medium duty clamps, you see ample squeeze out. There is a lot of misconception, especially with beginners, that you need to just crank down on these clamps and get a maximum pressure possible to get that glue to adhere, these boards to stick together and not have any issues. That's not true. All you need is a light pressure until the glue comes out. When those joints come together and the glue squeezes out, you're done. There's no reason to over clamp these or over pressurize that joint. It's just, you're not doing anything. You're just applying too much pressure. You could also cause some bowing and things like that in that joint if you try to apply too much. That's why these medium duty clamps are perfect for most of your glue ups, like cutting boards or panels, tabletops, that sort of thing. You don't need maximum pressure there. And then the light duty clamps are perfect for things like this, or just holding stuff in place while you get it screwed and glued. But when you combine both of these kits together, I think that's where it's going to shine for most people in the shop, because you can get a lot of clamps with a lot of these accessories for a very low price. Really, For about the same price as you can get 4 Bessey Revo clamps in a kit at about $225 on retail, you can pick up all of these clamps with this kit with those other blocks that I'm fixing to show you, all for around the same price. And you're getting way more clamps and a whole lot more capabilities for your shop. That's why I think these budget clamps will be taken over in 2025. Now, taking this sample panel out of the clamps, you can see there is no seam there, because if you clamp them up right and you have the proper jointing on the edge, which if you don't know how to join a board, I'll drop a link in the description on how to do that. You can see there's no gap. You think that's actually just a mark down the wood. The actual seam is just above that right there. If you look close enough, you'll see it. Perfectly flat, perfectly glued up with these clamps. Again, don't need a ton of pressure here. The handle on the medium duty parallel clamp slightly differs from that from the light duty. It has a more smooth, but still, it's almost oblong feeling, so you still get that really good grip on there. It actually is an oblong or an egg shape, so you get a really good grip on there, so you can tighten that down as needed. The jaws are very, very nice as well. I think it's one of the better options for clamps, especially at this price point if you're looking for some parallel clamps. But this kit comes with some cool accessories that I think a lot of people could use in their shop. You can also pick up just the joint bridges for $8 for a 4-pack at the time of this filming. So they're very budget friendly. If you wanted to add an extra set of these or just pick these up separately from the clamps, you can do that. Now, the medium duty kit, while also coming with the 4 clamps and the bridges, you also get these corner blocks. So if you wanted to set up a square glue up, you could do that. There are also other kits available, including heavy duty parallel clamps, but I think if you could budget the light duty kit with this medium duty kit, you'll have the perfect setup, especially if you're a beginner trying to get some clamps, or you just want to add some more clamps and options to your shop. This might be a great option for you. Check the link in the description for all these. Probably the granddaddy of all DeWalt tools is the famous DeWalt DW735X. This one has a supercharged upgrade in it that kind of makes it stand on its own. But just a stock DW735X is probably one of the most robust, most famous DeWalt tools ever created. And this thing has been on the market for a very, very long time. I'm actually surprised they haven't done an upgrade at this point, but when something's good, why mess with it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it type thing, and this is one of those. If you're looking for a buy once, cry once type planer, this one has stood the test of time, and that many, many people, including myself, would recommend over and over again. There are some challengers that have come on the market lately, including the Oliver planer that I reviewed that includes a helical head, but even that, there's still some things on this planer that set it apart and put it on another level from anything on the market today. First, this is a 2-speed planer. You do not get that a lot in benchtop style planers, and this is great to have. It has a finishing speed. In other words, it's slower. It's going to pull those boards through slower. It's going to give it a nicer finish. Then it has a dimensioning, or faster. In other words, it's going to pull it through there faster at 96 cuts per inch, or the finishing pass is 179 cuts per inch. So you can see it's moving it slower basically through the planer, so you get finer cuts if you're doing the finishing, and then moving it faster if you're just trying to dimension your boards down fairly quickly. And talking about dimensioning, this is a very, very powerful planer. It is one of the most powerful planers that I've used, benchtop style. It's hard to bog these down if you're using it properly. And one of the things I love most about this planer that I've seen nobody else do this well is that thickness gauge. When you slide the board in there, it kind of gives you a rough estimate about how much material it's going to take off. Nobody else is doing this right. This is the only one that I like on any planer. It doesn't really matter where you put the board in, anywhere across that bed, it's going to indicate. And that's where some of these other planers fall short. When you put the board in, you have to put it in a very specific place. It has to be a certain width so that it picks it up. It's just kind of half thought out. This is absolutely amazing. As far as adjusting up and down, this is one of the best as well. You're looking at 4 very big posts that rise up and down. It keeps this planer nice and steady, and that includes when you're sending boards through. There's no carriage lock here like a lot of other planers have to have that lock this carriage down to keep it from moving as you push your boards through. Because of the way this is designed, it is rock solid. You also get some quick depth settings, so you can do from 1/8 all the way up to 1 1/4 inches, so you can dimension down to that exact same thickness every single time using that. And then there's some micro adjustments as well on the bottom. As far as dust collection goes, it is fantastic. It actually has a blower in here that pushes the chips out, so you don't even need a dust collector specifically. You just need a bag or some way to catch this, and you do need something to catch it because it will produce a ton of chips. Not necessarily fine dust, but those planing chips are going to come out of there in rapid succession. Now, I've got a couple of upgrades in mind that take it from the next level to the ultimate level, and that includes a Bird Helix helical head installed. You can get this either pre-installed direct from Birch Helix. I'll link to that in the description, or you can just buy it on Amazon and install it yourself. Quite a bit cheaper. It just depends on which way you would rather deal with it. I prefer just to have it done so I didn't have to worry about it. Now what that does is it gives you the Helix head, or the helical head. And what that means is you got little knives that are turned at an angle, and when it's cutting the wood, it's actually cutting the wood. It's shearing it off versus chopping the wood like the straight blades that come on it. Now the straight blades that come in this planer are very good, but this helical head takes it to the next level. It gives you a really nice fine finish. It also changes the tone of the planer. In other words, the sound coming out of it's slightly less, not a ton, but you can tell the difference. But the main thing is you just get a much cleaner finish, and that means you don't have to sand as much because it's pretty good. I think what's coming out of there is probably about 120 grit. Another benefit is you're not getting a ton of tear out, especially if you're using species of wood that are prone to tearing out. Curly maple and those types just don't tear out as easy using the helical head. It is a fantastic upgrade if it's in your budget. I've also installed this digital gauge, and what I like about that is I can zero that out at any point, and then I can raise it back up and start planing again and get back to zeros. That way I can get the exact thickness of all of my boards, no matter if I move the planer up and down or not. This is a great add-on as well. There's a couple of different brands here. I've got iGaging, but Wixie also makes one, a very popular brand to install on this, and they're very easy to install. Overall, I think if you're in the market for a benchtop style planer, it's very difficult to go wrong with this one. It just depends on your needs and what you're looking for. Now, these are quite pricey, but they do go on sale on occasion throughout the year, maybe 2-3 times a year. And if you don't know, I have a daily deals email that I'm sending out, and if this goes on sale, it's gonna be in that email. So you might wanna sign up. There's a first link in the description and the pinned comment, and it's absolutely free. I just like sharing these deals to help you save some money. Not just for the planer, but basically any tool you're gonna be looking for. Now, from affordable to plain out awesome, this is the brand new Oliver benchtop planer. And I think this changed woodworking for a few reasons. First, it has a bunch of features here on a benchtop planer that most people or most manufacturers are not putting on there. Number one is the helical head. A lot of people are putting spiral heads on there, but not helical heads. And the difference is the helical head, the cutters are at an angle, so it's basically shearing the wood as you cut it, whereas a spiral head is at a 90-degree angle, so it's basically chopping the wood. You get a finer finish, a better finish with the helical head. And they also included the Wixie digital scale on here, which I think is awesome. It's a great addition. For instance, if I need to get 4 boards exactly the same, I can use that digital scale as a reference. When I get the first board exactly where I want it, I can zero that out, and then I can start running my other boards through there and then have them all exactly the same thickness. You can do them all at the same time as well, but if you say run 3 boards through there and then you have to come back later, it's always good to be able to come back and reference the size that you had previously. Not only that, they added 2 speeds to this planer, so you get a coarse and a fine finish. They also have 4 auto depth stops on the side for common sizes from 5/32, quarter, half, and 3/4. So if you are doing 3/4 boards, you just set that on 3/4 and then start running them through till you get them all at 3/4 of an inch. It also has a little scale here on the front that gives you an idea about how much you're gonna be taking off, and it's just an overall well-built machine. They fixed the top from the previous version that was flimsy. Now it has an all-metal top, and I just really appreciate all the refinements they did, and I think they changed woodworking for a lot of people by giving us access to a benchtop planer with the helical head, with the digital scale, with the 2 speeds. Like, it's just an all-around great package. While it does cost a little more than some of the other competitors with straight knives or even spiral heads, I think it's a great upgrade if you have the budget. The Bora Speed Horse XT. These things are pretty impressive. Bora sent these over for me to check out, and I am very glad they did. This is one of those tools that I've seen around a bunch, but I've never had the opportunity to put my hands on them. Now, I've had other style of temporary workbenches and sawhorses and things like that, but these are different. First and foremost, they fold out extremely fast. I'm sure you've seen the videos of them folding out. There's literally one switch right under the handle. Both the legs are gonna come out, and then you're ready to go. You can just use this as standard sawhorses. A couple of things I noticed straight out of the box was it has a nice grippy, almost a sandpaper feel right here on the top. So if you do use these as sawhorses or work surface, it's gonna grip the wood or whatever you're putting on there. So I like to see that. It also has notches on each end that will accept a 2x4. And what you could do with that, with 2 of these, because typically these come in 2 packs, you can set up your own temporary workbench. And I think this is where it'll level things up for a small shop, because you're able to take these in and out of the shop especially if you're having to set up in the driveway or the backyard or on the patio or something like that to do your work, or if you're just working on job sites, you could take these, have a workbench set up in no time. Here's a few genius features that they really thought through. First, when you drop these 2x4s into these slots, there's screw holes on the outside. You can screw these in place so they don't move. The other genius feature is if you put a 2x4 across the top of your sawhorse here, so you don't cut your sawhorse, it's actually the exact same level as these 2x4s that you dropped into the slots. Absolutely thinking ahead. I'm glad they did that. Speaking of well thought out, I think one thing they've done very well are the legs. You can extend these individually up to 6 inches. And where that matters is if you're on uneven surfaces or different things like that, you can get these things level for your projects. Another really cool thing is you can extend all 4 of them the same amount, making the total height of this from 30 inches all the way up to 36 inches. Where that lands on me, I'm right at 5'11", is mid-thigh all the way up to the waist. So there's a lot of adjustments built right into these legs, and to adjust them is very, very easy. Again, well thought out. There's levers or switches on the back. You press that lever, and then you can extend the leg, and there's positive stops along the way. It's very easy to adjust and just all around well thought out. Now, one of these will hold up to 1,800 pounds. If you put 2 together, you can divide the weight between the 2, and you can get up to 3,600 pounds, which is pretty cool. To fold these up, very simple. There's actually little levers right under where the 2x4s go. You pull those, and it collapses those legs up. The only concern I have here is finger pinching. You'll have to really watch that when you're collapsing this up, just because you have so many moving parts here with the legs coming together and then also folding up inside there. Just be careful. Nice handle to carry these around. They're not overly heavy for what you're getting, especially for the capacity at 1,800 pounds. You can store these away very easily. Like you could have an entire workbench with your plywood, your 2x4s, and 2 of these, take up very minimal space and have a full-size workbench. I think that's why these are awesome. If you're in the market for a workbench or an assembly table or even a miter station or somewhere to put your table saw or any number of things for storage or use in your shop, check out this Craftsman workbench. This is 72 inches long by almost 24 inches deep. It includes a nice hefty shelf on the bottom for storing anything you want. And then of course it does have this nice worktop. What I love about this worktop is it is dead flat. I took my precision straight edge, laid it up there, 0 light coming from underneath it, literally dead flat. So you could use this as an assembly table. You can also use it as a miter station. So you can put your miter saw on it, you can mount your miter saw to this, you have plenty of space on the left and right, so you'll be able to cut all the boards you want. And of course, if you have a small job site saw, you can set that on the top. That way you can have a place to use your table saw, because stored underneath when not in use, so you can assemble things on the top. And this thing also has 2 really nice drawers. The one on the left's a little bit wider than the one on the right. Looking at a 33-inch wide drawer on the left and then a 22-inch wide drawer on the right, a little over 22 inches. It does have power built in. You can just plug it into power. Then there's a power strip on that end that has 6 outlets and 2 USBs. A lot of little work lights and things like that work off of USB, so I'm glad they included that as well. It also has pegboards on each end that you can mount tools to if you so choose. Give you some extra storage there. And this does come with 4 casters or just 4 of these adjustable feet if you want to make this more stationary. And these are adjustable feet as well, so you can level this up in your shop. As far as rolling around goes, like it rolls extremely easy, so you can be able to move this in and out, especially if you're in a garage and you have to move your stuff out to work and then move it back in for storage. This might be a good option. This thing's so nice, I'm having to fight my wife from taking it because she's wanting it in her laser room. As far as the construction goes, again, you get a really nice heavy-duty top, and all the steel and everything is a really nice heavy-duty steel. I think this would last you an extremely long time. These drawers also soft close, so that's always a plus. I love this thing. Probably one of the most requested reviews I've gotten over the last year or so is the DeWalt Stealth Sonic Shop Vacs. I have heard nothing but amazing things about this thing, about how quiet it is, how powerful it is, and I had to try this out because these are hot sellers right now at Lowe's, probably for a good reason, but I've never heard one live and in person, so here we go. It seriously is much quieter. That is no volume reduced at all here on this video. Check it out one more time. That's cool. They claim 50% quieter than a standard shop vac, and I absolutely believe it. Like, I can talk over this and it be just fine. If I'm in the shop working, it's not going to be an annoyance or a very loud sound in here, especially if you have neighbors and things like that. They'll probably appreciate that. And as far as power goes, very sucky. This is a 9-gallon, 5-horsepower shop vac, and it comes with everything you need to get started. This is a wet dry vac as well. If you needed to use this to clean up spills or leaks or any kind of water damage or anything like that, this could be the way to go. Mostly why I like this is because of the dust collection. It does come with a bag, which I absolutely love, having a shop vac that has a bag with it, and you can buy, of course, extra bags and things like that, because that's going to keep that filter clean. As you see here, we're going to use this as a dust collector today using various tools, and you'll see here that after it's over, the filter remains very clean and all the dust is in the bag. That's why I love these bags, because it prevents that dust from clogging up your filter, and then thereby if your filter is clogged, you get less suction. So you still keep that good suction power, pulling in that dust and everything into that bag, which I absolutely love. Out of the box, when you get this, you're going to get 4 tires or 4 wheels that you're going to be able to install very easily, 1 screw a piece. They slide in and lock in. And then there was a cool little accessory bag that comes with this one that locks into the back. You screw these little brackets in from inside, and then you can drop your little accessory bag onto the back. That'll hold these hard pipe hoses as well as all of your accessories that you would be using with this shop vac, so you keep them all handy. It does include a strap up top to be able to roll your hose up and keep that nice and tidy, all in one little small package. They claim 2.5 times more motor life on this model versus some of the competitors, and it also has a 3-year warranty. If you're looking for some way to collect dust or clean up things around the shop, you should probably check this out. Throughout this entire video, which you haven't seen yet, but I made a lot of cuts on the table saw, vacuumed up all the drill shavings. I even took this to my big dust collector and sucked up a bunch out of there just to show you what the filter looks like. Very, very, very little dust. And we're talking like a tiny spot right there. The rest of that filter is clean, which is what you want to see, especially after all I've sucked up today, which was quite a bit. This bag is about half full, and most of that comes from sucking up all that dust in the dust extractor, which includes MDF dust, walnut dust, maple dust, a little bit of everything in there kind of mixed together. So you get a variety here. That's why you want a bag in your shop vac, and I'm glad they included it with this one. Harbor Freight has 3 different options here that I've personally tested that I really liked. First, if you're on a very strict budget, check out the Bauer shop vac. It works extremely well, plenty of suction power, has a bag included that's going to keep your filters from getting dirty, and then also pair that with the Cyclone separator. Remember this Harbor Freight bucket? They sell these buckets very cheap too, and then there is a Cyclone separator that sets on top, and what that's going to do is separate out the large chunks of wood. It's going to spin, you'll see it spinning in there. All the large wood or dust chunks are going to fall into the bucket, which means they're not going into your shop vac and filling up your bag and stopping up your filter. Only the fine dust that's light enough to stay airborne will go into the shop vac and be filtered out. This is a very solid option to start out with dust collection if you're on a budget. If you have a bigger budget and you're very concerned about the very tiny particles that get into the air, which get into your lungs, you have to check out probably one of the best Harbor Freight tools that I've ever used, and that is the Hercules dust extractor. This dust extractor is fantastic. This rivals a Festool dust extractor as far as in suction performance, dust collection, everything like that. Like, it's a very good competitor at a fraction of the cost. A dust extractor is different than a shop vac in that it has HEPA filtration. In other words, it's going to filter out the very, very, very fine dust. And there's volume control, not on the sound, but on the suction amount. A dust extractor, you can turn down that suction, and what that means is you'll be able to basically keep your sander from being sucked down into the stock that you're sanding. If you're putting too much pressure on your sander or the suction is pulling down into the stock, it's going to create those little pigtails you see when you start applying stains. So this is going to help you get better finishes when you can dial down that suction. Or if you're using routers or track saws or anything else with a dust extractor, you can crank that thing up and get as much suction as possible. I think this is one of the best upgrades or best tools that Harbor Freight has put out in a very long time. But it's not really meant to collect the dust from things like table saws, jointers, planers, anything like that, because they just put out too much volume of dust for that thing to keep up with. But Bauer does have a very nice dust collector, very easy to assemble. I was actually surprised, and it goes down to 2 microns in filtration. It also has a filter cleaning option. You just turn that handle up top, it cleans the filter out, and it comes with everything you need except the hose. I do recommend picking up this hose. This comes from Amazon. It is also very budget friendly, and I paired this with the lightning lock from Carbon Method so that we can make dust collection very easy in the shop by just being able to move it around. If you're in a small shop like me, I don't have dedicated piping for dust collection. I use this flex hose to go from tool to tool. This helps conserve space in my shop while also giving me dust collection, and paired with these lightning lock adapters makes it so easy. I was very impressed with the Bauer dust collector performance. It did a fantastic job on the planer, the table saw. It's just a good all-around option. If you're on a budget, it's hard to find a dust collector that collects this much dust with this much CFM in this price range. I think they did a good job. Now, I purchased the Hercules dust extractor myself. Harbor Freight was kind enough to send over the Bauer dust collector for me to try out, as well as the shop vac and cyclone separator. This is the brand new Milwaukee dust extractor, and there's a couple of things that make this thing super nice. First, it works with your 18-volt batteries, but it also works just by plugging it in. So even if you're not on Milwaukee's battery platform yet, you might want to check this out because you can just use it with a standard electrical cord. Just plug it in with your extension cord, you're off to the races. Now, this thing is a HEPA filtered dust extractor, and there's a couple of reasons why you would want a dust extractor over your shop vac. First, if you're doing a lot of sanding, routing, or even using a track saw, maybe even a miter saw, you might want to check out something like this, because that HEPA filtration is going to filter out that very, very fine dust and keep that out of your lungs, which is very important. This has dual HEPA filters right back here in the good old trunk, and I like that they put it in a trunk. It is kind of a neat idea. This also has auto clean, so as you're using it, it's going to be cleaning those filters, and it includes a bag. I would suggest picking up a couple of extra bags just because it's good to have those. Also, with the dust extractor, you can dial up or down the suction on these things, and this one's right on the front. And the reason you would want to dial up or down that suction, if you're sanding, you want to dial that down so it doesn't pull your sander into the wood, as I've talked about before. And if you're using something like a track saw or router, you want to get the most suction possible. You just punch it all up to number 4. Now, this one has a really cool feature. If you're into the one key system where you're keeping track of your tools and all that stuff remotely, this has that built in. This also has VAC link, which is basically a Bluetooth connection between a tool and this dust extractor. Also, it has a remote button that comes with this. If you look at something like the Festool dust extractor, I have one right here. It has a button on it that it's a Bluetooth button that turns it on and off. This has the same thing, but it comes with this dust extractor. It's extra with the Festool. This also comes with a couple of adapters for a table saw. It didn't fit my DeWalt, but it should fit the Milwaukee table saw, as well as smaller tools like sanders and things like that. They recommend you run this on 2 12-amp-hour Forge batteries. You can get this in a combo with the charger and those 2 batteries. It's going to be quite a bit extra versus just buying bare tool. I happen to have one 12-volt battery on hand. I did have to buy one 12-volt Forge battery. Man, those things are pricey. But overall, I think this is a solid option. This also is PACKOUT compatible, and I think this is a very strong selling point, especially if you're already into the Milwaukee platform. Having your PACKOUTs on top of this, especially in the shop or at the job site, is really nice to have because you can keep your tools on top, or you can keep extra parts and pieces with you. I think it's a really cool option. And this is built for transport. There's handles everywhere. There's a handle on top, there's handles on each side, and there's a handle on the back. The only place they didn't put a handle that really needs it is on the front. You can grab a hold of the hose if you need to. I think it would have been nice to have that on the bottom. Out of the gate for Milwaukee's first dust extractor, or at least first one I knew about, cordless corded dust extractor, they knocked it out of the park. Like, it is a perfect companion to your Milwaukee track saw or any sander that you may have. I'm using it with a Festool sander. Very happy with it. Overall, you should just go get it if you're in the market. You won't be disappointed. One of the best upgrades that I ever made that I wish I had done way before are my shop lights. These are Barina LED. They're 8-foot and they come in a 10-pack. I bought these over 3 years ago and they're still shining bright. What I love about these is they're very easy to install. You can hardwire them, or you can just plug them into an outlet like I have here in my garage. I've actually got 5 of these hardwired in, and then I have 5 of these plugged into an outlet. The reason I did that was so I wanted to get them on 2 different circuits, just because I don't think it would be good to plug all 10 into one outlet. I don't even think they recommend that. But having all 10 of these in here, I get good even light. It doesn't matter what time, day or night, I'm working in the shop, I have plenty of light to do any task that I'm gonna need to do. Speaking of light, they put out a ton of light. We're talking 15,000 lumens. Like, that's super bright. So you're not gonna have any issues with brightness or anything like that. And because you can get them in 10 packs, you can spread these out to cover your entire shop so you don't have any darker areas, and that's what I've done. I have 5 on this side and 5 on that side right there behind you, so I don't have any dim spots. And as you get older, it's kind of harder to see unless you got good lighting. These come in 2 different colors, 5000K and 6500K. I picked the 5000 because I just think it's a better lighting for the shop. 6500 is probably a little bit too warm. I like the cooler 5000K color myself. What's great about these lights is 5 of them will daisy chain together. In other words, they come with cords that plug into each other, so you do not have to worry about trying to plug each one into an outlet. Literally just plug one in and then you can just string them together, and then they light up all at the same time. I actually have one set on the Amazon device, so when I walk in, I can just say, shop lights off, shop lights on, and turn the lights on and off, at least half of them. This could change how you woodwork in your shop, or at least upgrade your workbench, or CNC if you have one of those, but it's not necessary. This is the brand new Micro Jig Match Fit CNC work holding kit. But don't let CNC scare you away, because this is way more versatile than just using it on a CNC. While you can use it on a CNC, and I'll talk about that, but these are absolutely genius for the shop, no matter if you have a CNC or not. Now, Micro Jig did send this over for me to check out. Let me show you everything it can do. Seriously, I was impressed. Now, this kit provides 4 different ways to clamp your stock or whatever you're working on down to a table, whether that be your CNC table, or what I've done here is just use my jointing jig, and we're going to use this as a temporary clamping surface, because a lot of times you just have a sheet of plywood, or your worktop is just plywood, because you don't have a way to horizontally clamp things down. And if you just use a regular clamp to clamp things, then the clamp is actually in the way. So this is going to allow you to work on the surface of your project no matter what you're doing there, no matter if you're sanding, routing, that sort of thing. Now, to build this is extremely easy. I have step-by-step build plans on this on my website you can go check out. I'll drop a link in the description, but it's not necessary. I'm going to show you everything you need to know on how to build this. You're going to need a sheet of plywood or a scrap piece of plywood that's about 3 foot long, give or take. You're also going to need it to be about 10 inches wide, give or take. And then you're just going to cut dovetail grooves using that dovetail bit into this piece of plywood. I cut 1 groove across the plywood, 4 inches from each end, and then 7 inches between the ones in the middle there. Very easy. And then you'll route 2 parallel all the way down the length of this jig at about 2 inches from each side. That's it. That's all you got to do. Now you've got a clamping surface. You could literally clamp this down to your workbench, and then, like you see here, clamp any number of stock down using this system that I'm going to tell you about. And yes, this is a system. So if you're using this at the workbench, there's several ways you can clamp things down. One of my favorites in this kit is this cam lock. They call these ring clamps, and the way they work is like a cam action. You can see the lock and unlock symbols on there. There's only 3 pieces to this. You get what they call the track screw. It's basically got a dovetail fitting on there with a screw sticking out. Slide that right into your slot, and then from there you just put the big round piece on, the small round piece on, and then the actual wing nut there. And you can tighten this down. When you tighten this center part down, the outer part will still rotate, but again, it's a cam action, so it's not actually round. So when you twist it, it locks something into place if you have something to reference it off of. And that's where these little fences come into play. And you've got 2 of these. And there's 2 different directions you can use them depending on the thickness of your stock. I have this 1/2 inch piece of stock, and I need to use the thinner side so that my router can get past it. If I use the thicker side, it may interfere with that. If I had a 1 inch stock or thicker, then this wouldn't be a problem. But I am glad that they did put 2 different levels on there that you could use so that you could use different size stock. You also get 2 ramp clamps, they're called them. And these are really kind of unique and very genius level. Again, you use your track screw is what actually locks this down to the track or to your jig or to your CNC. Now, these ramp clamps work because as you tighten down, it actually pushes away from where you've got it locked into the track and into the stock. You can use these flat against your stock, or it does have a 90-degree notch in there, so you can use those to clamp corners down as well. You also get 4 U-pad clamps, and the way these work is if you need to clamp down vertical pressure on your stock, you can use these to do so. And they basically just have this block that has 2 levels on it. Depending on how much leverage you need on your stock, depending on how thick the stock is, you can rotate those around. And as you tighten down the nut, this will snug it down, pull it down toward the surface. This is good as if you're maybe doing some sign work or engraving work or something like that. This will help keep that locked in place, and you don't have to worry about the side-to-side movement. You also get 3 edge guides or fences, whichever way you want to look at it. They're calling them edge guides. Now you can use these on the CNC to reference your X and Y axis so that you always have your 0, your starting point, always locked in. That way you can set the stock in place and it's always at 0. You know where your 0's at. That's very handy. But you can also use it on this jig to lock things in place, using it as a fence. Now these fences work with this track runner. You slide this track runner in there, then you have a bolt and washer that screws down from the top to lock it in place. Now with this jig, there's several things you can do with it at a standard workbench, outfeed table, whatever you're using. You can even clamp this down to a set of Sawhorses, and then you have extra clamping capacity. So if you're working in a small shop, this might be perfect for you. Now a few ways you could use this is you could clamp stock down to sand it, so you're not trying to wrestle around with it while you're trying to get it sanded. You can use it while you're routing edges, especially on smaller stock, get that locked down, because a lot of times it's unsafe to try to route a small piece like that. So having it nice and clamped down is just extra security. It just gives you that extra option. And if you're a hand tool person, you can use this if you're using your hand planes and things like that. Micro jig has been blowing our minds for years because they come up with the micro jig gripper, like most everybody's favorite push block. They come up with this, and they just keep coming out with really cool stuff, and I like it a lot. There's not many people making this other than one other company, and it's called Grabo. But this is the DeWalt Grabo. And if you haven't seen this, I showed this a little while back in a video briefly. This is one of the most genius tools that you can buy for your wood shop or many other trades really, but specifically for us in the shop, this is going to help you carry sheet goods, specifically plywood, MDF, fiberboard, that sort of thing. This thing is absolutely on another level. First, this works on the DeWalt 20-volt platform. So if you already have DeWalt batteries, that's all you need. The way this works, it's basically a giant suction cup, and it'll hold a ton of weight or pressure on there. And when you activate it, it basically suctions itself down to the plywood or whatever you're trying to pick up. It doesn't matter if it's like a quartz countertop or marble or plywood or whatever you've got that's a flat surface, it will pull itself down and hold that pressure so that you can carry it around. And if you don't know, or if you've ever tried to move, especially 3/4 inch sheets of plywood, even 1/2 inch sheets of plywood in and out of the shop by yourself, it can become a very difficult task, especially when you go to put these things down because it's just kind of awkward, a big old sheet of plywood. So having a handle that you can install anywhere on the plywood to help you carry it is absolutely amazing. There's not a lot to this. There's a power button that turns it on. There's a button that activates the suction, and there's a button that releases the suction. It'll tell you on the screen what bar or PSI, depending on the way you want to read that. I like the PSI version. It'll tell you how much pressure it's pulling, and then there's a little sun cover over the screen if you're using this outside to help you read it easier. It also comes with a little tray that you can keep this in to prevent gunk from getting up in there, and it does come with some replacement filters and gaskets there on the bottom. It'll even give you a handle for your weight plates if you work out, so that's pretty cool. If the power shuts off or the battery runs out, you'll also hear an audible warning letting you know, hey, this thing's off, put it down before bad things happen. I think this is one of those tools that can just be a game changer for you if you need to be able to move this type of material around by yourself, or even getting 2 of these and having 2 people, depending on how heavy the thing is. If it's a marble slab or quartz slab or something like that, I can see these being extremely handy. Bye. Has to be one of the best inventions for an alternate to a track saw that I've seen in decades. I showed this a couple of years ago and we had the outlaw effect happen in full force. It sold out very, very quickly because of how useful it really is. This is the Mousecraft Track Saw Guide. It's absolutely genius. It's under $100 and they made a massive improvement. Plus, it'll fit basically any circular saw that you want to use with it. Let me show you what to do. First off, the packaging on this is really nice. You want your tracks to stay protected in transport so they don't get damaged before you get them, and they did a good job here. You'll see that in the packaging. When you unpackage everything, you see you have everything you need to get started cutting sheet goods or anything else. You get 2 track clamps, you get 2 pieces of track, and you get the trolley. So the only thing left is a circular saw. You provide that, you're off to the races. It comes with 2 tracks, and that gives you enough for 50 inches of cutting. So in other words, across a piece of plywood. They do sell extra tracks should you want to cut the full length of plywood. I would recommend picking those those up if you do break down plywood a lot. Now when you put these two pieces of track together, you may see a little bit of slack there. It's fine, most tracks do that. All you have to do is get some type of straight edge to hold against the track, snug those up, don't over tighten these screws. These are aluminum, and when you start tightening metal into aluminum, it can dent them, but that's true with Festool tracks, Makita tracks. These are just lightweight aluminum, so you don't want to bear down on those little screws. Snug is fine. One nice feature about this Mousecraft track is it has an anti-skid on the bottom. What that's for is when you set that track on a piece of plywood, it grips. It doesn't slide around very easily. Now you can push it if you want, but once you start putting pressure down, it really grips. And that's a nice feature to have on these tracks. The way this works is kind of genius. They made a trolley, basically, that will fit most circular saws up to 7 1/4 inches, and it rides on this track. You can adjust this trolley so that it fits just right on the track, so there's no slop in there. They also included a blade spacer that you're going to lay down on the stock, set your saw on there, then you can install the saw to the trolley. It's very easy. There's just 4 screw clamps that hold the saw in place, and it holds it securely. These also come with spacers should you need to have a spacer in there for any reason, and it will also fit the saw this way, whatever way that is. You just loosen these 2 screws, push this black bar up against the saw, snug them up, and then tighten down your clamps, and you're good to go. Like you're ready to start cutting. And it does a fantastic job on cutting. I use this to cut several different things, including plywood and even up to a 2-inch piece thick of walnut, and it was dead accurate. Now that's going to depend on the quality of your circular saw too, so keep that in mind. If you have one that's really flimsy, it may not get as accurate results on thicker woods, but for plywoods and MDF, most saws are probably going to do perfectly fine. Like I said, this will fit most circular saws up to 7 1/4. You can see here, I put a 7 1/4 rigid in, then a 7 1/4 RYOBI saw, and then a 6 1/2 inch RYOBI saw that goes the opposite direction of the other two, and it fits all 3. So it doesn't matter at all which direction your circular saw goes, it should fit. Now, I will say that if you have a very high-end rear handle worm drive circular saw like this, these don't fit in this track. But most other circular saws like these fit perfect. I reviewed this 2 years ago, and I'm still impressed with it. I mean, put a cape on me. I'm super impressed. This is awesome. But they just impressed me more because now they come out with this, the Mousecraft Track Saw Square. If you've ever seen any of my other videos on track saw accessories, I love a track square. It's like you make your track into a big speed square and you can get very quick, very accurate square cuts. So if you're breaking down sheet goods or just cutting across wider boards, this is going to be fantastic for you. And I love how they did it. This is very well integrated. First, it's very easy to install. There's just 2 T-nuts under there that you're going to slip into the track, snug those up. When you snug those up, everything just pulls itself square. Now, I would recommend checking that square every time just to double check. On mine, every time I've done this, it comes out perfectly square. So I like that it does that. There's also a very genius feature here. And when you set this down, there's a tab that you can slide forward, and that holds the edge of the square on your stock so everything remains level and flat and it doesn't tip or cause any inaccuracies at all. And a good thing about this track square is it doesn't matter which end of the track it's on, that's up to you. It'll fit both ways. And because of that little anti-tip slide moves back and forth, you can use that on either end as well. Another cool feature about the track square is the fact that they put little notches in there so that you can still use your clamps even when you're using the track square. I think that's a really cool idea, and I'm glad to see that here. I think this is one of the best ways that anybody has come up with to date on getting straight, accurate cuts, especially on plywoods, using your standard circular saw without breaking the bank. I've reviewed tons of track saws, and all of them are quite pricey, even the more budget options. This, if you already have a circular saw, it's the way to go. But it's not without its drawbacks. There are a few here. First, you can't bevel cut with this. It just won't work. These are for 90-degree straight cuts all day long. Works great for that, no bevel cuts. Dust collection is up to your circular saw. If it sucks, the dust collection is going to suck too. It's just the way it is. All circular saws are like that because of that big old exposed blade. There's no shroud there like track saws have to cover that. That's just nature of the beast. There's also no plunge action specifically. While I think you probably could do it, just the way circular saws, the way you have to loosen the depth adjustment and then try to, it's just not safe to do. So this isn't really a good option for plunge cutting. In other words, cutting something out of the middle of the piece of plywood or something like that. But for all other cuts, just straight 90-degree cuts, this is absolutely genius. Overall, I think this is a fantastic upgrade. I would highly recommend, if you're picking this up, go ahead and get this track square. You'll thank me later. These are as handy as a shirt pocket to have in the shop. Now, I bought this Mousecraft track saw guide a couple of years ago when I did that video, and then we gave it away, as we give away quite a bit of stuff here. However, for this video, they did send me the track saw guide and the square for me to check out. When I saw this, I knew I wanted to check it out. So thank you to Mousecraft for sending this over. I'm sure we'll pass this along to somebody soon. If you stick around, I'll give you a bonus tip on how to get really accurate square cuts on more narrow boards. The Kreg Rip Cut. I've used this a bunch. Like, I built so much stuff with the Kreg Rip Cut. There's one major drawback to this, but there's a ton of positives in it as well. Just like the Mousecraft, you can mount your circular saw into this and you start ripping. The one that I had would rip up to 24 inches wide, which for making shelves, cabinets, dressers, anything like that that's not overly bulky or overly wide, it works extremely well. And I made a lot of stuff with these things with my little rigid circular saw over the years. But there's one drawback that kind of, if you're not familiar with it, it'll get you. So at the end of the cut, you have to be sure, because of the way this thing is, it's basically a saw guide. It's not really a rail or anything like that. It's following along the edge of the plywood. So if the edge of the plywood is off, this could also create some inaccuracies in your cut. But for the most part, most plywood's good. If you're not holding enough pressure on that blue handle at the very end of the cut, it will walk on you. It will cause a pretty bad bow or miscut in the end of your cut. So just be aware to hold that pressure tight against the plywood as you finish the cut, and you'll be fine. The first couple times I was using this, I didn't do that. And I was like, wow, this is not good. And then once I figured out, well, you just hold a little pressure there, you'll get really good results. It's a nice option for a very affordable price. Now, everybody knows woodworkers need clamps, and there's 3 specific clamps I recommend from Harbor Freight. First, this Pittsburgh bar clamp, and the reason I recommend these, this thing's like 5 foot long, is because sometimes you just need a long clamp just to hold stuff together while the glue dries. When I was building this workbench, I used these to hold the frame together while the glue dries. I've used these to build flags. I've used these over the years. I've had these for like 8 years. They're nice. For the price you're getting, this is a 60-inch clamp. For the price you're getting of a 60-inch clamp, you can't beat it. You can't beat it. Now, some people complain that they're not robust enough because it's just an aluminum kind of C-shape, C-channel. You can cut a piece of wood and stick in here and it'll shore these up if you need to be more rigid. I have not. I've used these a bunch. Second, the Bremen parallel clamp. These are very hard to beat for the price. I put these up against all major brand of parallel clamps in a test, a whole video on that. These performed very well, very well. Now, if you have the money, I think Bessie Jet is very expensive unless you can find them on rare deals. I think Bessie's probably the best all-around clamp just to go with. But if you're on a budget and you're looking for solid parallel clamps, this is the ones I recommend. Next, what I used to think was old man clamps. I used to think these were meant for older woodworkers, but these are hand screw clamps. I use these all the time when I got them in the shop, especially if I need something held up vertically. Like when I'm drilling into the side of this board here, I need this held up vertically. These clamps do the trick. You can use these to hold up plywood, 2x, whatever. These are just really good clamps to have. You can use these to hold small parts of the drill press. You can use these as stop blocks on your router table. Like, there's a multitude of uses for these things, and Harbor Freight sells these cheap, cheap, cheap. Now, if you watch my channel much at all, you know I don't recommend the F-style bar clamps from Harbor Freight. I don't think they're very well made. I think they're using cheaper metals and they bend very easily. I bought several, of course, when I first started because they were budget friendly. I was able to get some and they did a fair job for a little while, but if you put a little bit of too much pressure on them, they do start bending. And so I think you're better off just getting something like Irwin's or Jorgensen or some of those type brand clamps. So that's why I would really just avoid those if you can. Next up is the 18-volt work light. Now in the previous video I talked about 5 RYOBI tools that people would hate. I had a work light in there, and that one had a flexible neck on it where you could bend it and put it in position. This one is a little bit more unique in the fact that you can hang it in 2 different ways, or it will literally just stand up on its own using those 18-volt batteries you've probably already got, or should have anyway. Now on the top, it does have a flip-out stowable hook that you can hang it from any position that you want up high. It also has one built into the base that will allow you to hang it in a different position should you need to hang it overhead or anything like that. Now this is, again, running off that 18-volt platform, and it is quite bright. If you turn it on, it shines pretty good. This is going to light up your workspace pretty good, especially, again, in tight spaces, attics, crawl spaces, inside the hood of a car, anything where you're going to need that extra light. Inside the workshop, if you just need to literally put a little light over the top of what you're working on, I'm getting older, folks. When I start looking at things in dim light, I have a very hard time seeing it. This is super handy. And it has 4 different modes. It has a bright and a dim with both lights lit up. You push the button, it goes to dim. You push it again, it turns off this bottom light. So now when you fold it over the top of your workpiece like this, you have a place to work. This side light's not on, so it doesn't affect your vision, just the top light coming down. It's a very good feature, and that is also in bright and dim. And then of course when you push it one more time, it goes off, and you can store this away. Super flat packed, ready to go. Take the battery out. Literally weighs very little, like very, very little. The only weight's coming from the battery, should you leave it installed. This is one of those, if you're already on the RYOBI platform, you should probably just pick it up because it takes up minimal space and will be super handy to have when you need it. Power Tool Innovation Award winner for 2024. I was like, huh? What? How's that possible? Why? Why did they pick it? And then I started thinking about it. It's like country breakfast. Sometimes I call myself country breakfast. Country breakfast, isn't that the light? A light? Power Tool Innovation Award. Isn't that light the one you grab every time you need a light? Yep, it is. This thing was a Power Tool Innovation Award winner for 2024. I couldn't believe it at first, but the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? They're right. This is a very, very good work light, and it has some cool features on there, and I use this all the time. For a long time, I was like, why would I need a work light? I got a shop full of lights, but for whatever reason, I keep grabbing this when I need some extra light. Sometimes it's just to take a photo for the videos and things, but a lot of times I just need extra lights somewhere in the shop or somewhere in the house. If the lights go out, that kind of thing. This is one of those that I'll use all the time. Now, I like the fact that it's on the rigid 18-volt platform, so it's cordless. You can plug that whatever battery size you want right in there. The life of this, just the LED light, is going to use very little battery anyway, but you get long battery life. One of the greatest things about this light is it has 360 degrees of coverage of light output, and you can change the brightness of that. I believe it's 2,000 lumens is the brightest setting, and then it goes all the way down 3 different settings to off. Now, it does have different modes as well. You can put it to the front, you can put it to the back, and then of course all the way around 360. And those work at any of those brightnesses as well. Couple of handles up top. It also has a hanger here should you want to hang it from a rafter or cars or anything like that. You need to get wherever it needs to hang. I mean, this is one of the most useful lights I have had. Now, there is also a USB port back here that you can use to charge your devices, which is awesome. Now, this Power Tool Innovation Award came under the category of workwear and safety, and I guess lighting falls under the safety. Now, why did they pick it? 360 or the 180 light, and then front, back, different modes, but it's also IP54 dust and water resistant, which is perfect for the wood shop, so you don't have to worry about the dust screwing it up or anything like that. And if you wanted to use it outdoors, if it got sprinkled on or anything like that, it's not going to matter. You can take this camping, take it on the job site. It's just a good all-around useful light, so I see why they pick it, because I picked this one up more than any other light. And I've got 4 or 5 different work lights in here, and this is the one I've been grabbing. This is next level. This is the RYOBI Tri-Power Tower Light. Say it 3 times fast. Tri-Power Tower Light, Tri-Power Tower Light, Tri-Power Tower Light. This is a fantastic little work light, or again, if the power goes out or anything like that, it's very handy to have this around. I love having this thing. I use it all the time for various reasons. This thing telescopes up very tall. I'm 5'11", so way up here. It's a lot taller than me. That's really not the main feature of this light. First up, it is extremely bright. Has 4 different heads on here that also move, so you can adjust those any way you should need to. They also have different brightness settings, basically low, medium, and high. And then at the last, you can only power, or you can option to power just one, this front one here. Another very cool feature is the fact that this light will detach from the base of this tower light, and then you can just use any of your 18-volt batteries to power this light, just like you would any other work light. So you can literally take this anywhere you need to, in the attic, under the house, under the car hood, in the shop, anywhere like that, under the sink, depending on what you're repairing. But very bright, very useful light. However, not only can you power it with your 18-volt batteries, the reason this is called a tri-power light is because you can also power it with 40-volt batteries, or you can plug it in using an extension cord to your standard 120-volt outlet. Extremely versatile light. One of the best on the market, and it's very, very well built. I love this thing. Oh, and at my editor Chris's request, we did try to power a few tools on the top of this tower light. Some worked, and some didn't. Kind of interesting. This is the easiest way that you're ever going to find to sharpen a chisel, hands down. If you're a beginner or you've never sharpened chisels before, you can sharpen them with this, the G-Sharp Sharp Edge. And it's made by a gentleman in England. He and his wife make these in his garage and ship them out. So it's a very small business, and it's a genius idea. Couldn't be easier. It comes with several different diamond stones, and he's told me that he's used the same diamond stones on his chisels for decades. Like, these are gonna last you a very long time. All you do, set the angle that you want to sharpen your chisel at while applying very little pressure on your chisel into that diamond stone, and then just move it back and forth. Then, go to the next grit. You do that about 20 passes per, and you get a razor sharp chisel like you've never had before, especially if you're a beginner. You don't have to have a ton of stuff to sharpen chisels. Other methods have like 6 or 8 stones that you have to step through, or it's really complicated and very hard to do. This makes it very simple, it's very affordable, and it's just genius. This year has been the year of cordless sanders. In 2025, for whatever reason, everybody's decided to show up with these things and show out. There's 3 options here depending on what platform you want to be in as far as battery platforms, and they all have their own special features that just make them so cool. First, one of my favorites, all 3 of these are my favorites, let's just say that. It's like picking a favorite kid. I like all of them for different reasons. The first, this is the Makita. It's a 6-inch sander. This is a cordless, corded sander. Now this one's a little bit controversial because it does still have a cord, but it still has a battery. The good thing about this is you offload the weight of the battery off of this sander. So this sander is extremely light and it's extremely smooth. No vibration to speak of. It does a really good job with sanding. Great job with dust collection. Almost no heat buildup here. Variable speed and just overall a joy to use. I like this one a lot. Next up, Milwaukee's M12 sanders. These are fantastic little finish sanders to have in the shop. There's only one drawback, which we'll get to. But first, 6-inch sander. You can get these in 2 different stroke levels, so depending on how aggressive you want. It's 2.5 millimeter and 5 millimeter. I still have both of these. They're both fantastic. The 2.5 millimeter has no vibration. Like you can see when I put a cup of water on there, it like doesn't even ripple the water. The one with the higher stroke barely ripples the water. There's very little vibration there as well. Good dust collection. Overall, a great entry into sanders for Milwaukee as far as cordless 12-volt sanders. Variable speed. You're getting a bunch packed into these sanders. However, the battery life's not as good as something like the Makita, but the Makita's using a 40-volt battery, 5-amp-hour battery, and depending on which battery you use with the Milwaukee, so if you use the higher capacity batteries, you get a little more battery life, but if you're just using those little stub-in batteries, 2.5 amp hour, you're not gonna get very long, 12 or 15 minutes. So that's one drawback to the Milwaukee. But the latest release in cordless sanders is Festool, and they would not be outdone in this category. I bought this, it come in a few days ago, and oh my goodness. There's a full video on the channel by now. You gotta check it out. First, it has a headlight. And I thought when I saw this online, what a gimmick. What are they doing? Like, why would you put a light on a sander? But I ate crow because it's really cool. When you're sanding, you can see every imperfection. You can see the grain of the wood, everything. You can see the fine dust laying on top. Like, you can see everything. Because of the angle of that light and because of how bright it is, you can adjust that. It is so nice to have on a sander, and I would suspect, unless there's some patent that prevents them from doing it, other companies are going to come out with these lights like this on the sander. It's almost a halo style light, like covers over half of the sander up front. It is cordless, they're 18-volt cordless platform, and the batteries are Bluetooth compatible, and you can connect those to the Festool app. You don't have to. Don't freak out if you don't like apps, but you can, and then you can really dial in things. You can dial the light settings in. You can change the speed of the sander. You can see how long you've been using your sander, how many hours it has on it. Like, there's a lot of cool details here that these other platforms aren't offering, and I think it's really cool. If you don't want to use the app, this button goes from 25% brightness to 100% brightness to off. You can turn I think it's what the battery settings are. Does come with a dust bag, but if you're using it with a dust collector, you're not going to see any dust. Like, it's pulling it all in there. Battery life's not amazing on these either, but these are only 4-amp-hour batteries that I'm using. I'm thinking about 30 minutes or so is what I got. So maybe a little shy of 30 minutes. Comes with 2 batteries in this combo kit, or if you already have their batteries, you can just buy it bare tool. I think out of these 3, you're going to be looking at either Makita or Festool. Man, it would be a tough choice, but it's good to have choices. One of the most viral tools of 2024 was this little baby Cobalt toolbox. These things sold out like crazy right around Black Friday of 2024, and for good reason, because they are just so cool. These are probably the perfect little bench top toolbox because you can just set them up there and keep your commonly used items in there, like maybe pencils or tape measures or other small parts. I like to keep some CNC parts in this one so that I can have them handy. The tape measure also fits in the bottom shelf. The upper two shelves are a little less deep, so you can keep smaller items in there, pencils, that sort of thing. Even my calipers up there. And then on the top, there's a soft pad so you can lay anything up there you want. These are stackable, so if you do get, I think get the two tray one will fit on top of this. These do come in multiple colors. This one's blue, but I think they have black, white, camo, and a couple other different colors you could choose from. These are just fantastic. For less than $25, they're a no-brainer just to get one to put on your workbench, or at least on your toolbox or something like that. This is the new RYOBI 40-volt Air Canon, as they call it. This thing is very cool. It's hybrid, so you can use either a cord or the battery, the 40-volt batteries. And with summer heat coming on, this may be the way to keep you cool while you're in the shop. All right, so this fan will tilt 180 degrees, so you can pretty much get any angle you want. It has 3 speed settings. Number 1 is kind of a light breeze, what it's on now. Barely hear it, a little bit of hum. Throw it on number 2, and then you got kind of a little between a breeze and a wind, right? Not bad. Number 3 is the air cannon. If I had flowing locks, it may blow it off. It has 6-inch wheels, so you roll it around wherever you need to. It also has a nice little handle there. They claim that it will run up to 34 hours of runtime on the battery, 6300 CFM, if that means anything to you. Again, on that 40-volt, big old beefy batteries. Pretty nice fan. If you need to move some air around in your shop to keep you cool this summer, or if you go camping, tailgating, etc., you may want to check into this. The rigid fan, if you saw that review when I did it a while back, very similar fan. This one's a little more powerful than that one. Puts out a little bit more airflow, or quite a bit more airflow than the rigid. This should be available with the battery charger combo kit or a standalone tool. I'll put a link in the description and a pinned comment to all these tools, and there should be a product button right there on your screen you can click and check out. This is a dolly that converts into a workbench. And I know some people call this a hand truck, but some people call buggies shopping carts, but we don't here in the South. This is a dolly in my opinion, and I think it's a great little upgrade, especially if you need to move things around the shop. You can put your boxes and things like that on it on the job site, take them in and out to things, but it does turn into a little workbench. It'll hold a little miter saw. It's got a pretty good weight capacity, and it converts really quickly. This is one of those things that if you're in a small shop or a small space where you're having to take your workbench in and out of the shop, this might be a good option for you because it'll fold up basically flat and you can store it out of the way. And when you do need it, it will fold out so you can have a workbench. This is one of those options that I think a lot of people could take advantage of. The only thing I didn't like about this is the scale on top was not accurate. If you're using that for whatever reason, I would just use a regular tape measure. And the top on here is absolutely flat, so you don't have to worry about that. So if you're using this for assembling small parts or small projects, this might be the way to go. This is the single most versatile woodworking tool ever invented, and that's the router and router table combo. They allow you to do a lot of woodworking projects and processes that you just simply aren't able to do before, or not as easy anyway. This is the Craig Precision Router Table. I'm going to show you all the amazing features that are packed into this table, and then I'll show you a trick or two that you may not have seen before using a router table. If you'd like to check out this or any tool that I show in the video today, I'll link those in the description and the pinned comment to help you find them easier, or in that shop button right here on YouTube. Thank you to Craig for sponsoring this video. All right, assembling this frame is very easy. And the instructions are extremely clear. You should have zero problems. If you can tighten a nut and a bolt, you should be able to assemble this nice and square. Now, when you put this together, one thing you'll notice is there's square holes, not round, but in this case, a round peg does go into a square hole because this bolt actually has a square shoulder on it, so it seats down into that square part, and then also all the bracing also has that square notch in there, so everything locks in. So you only need one wrench. In other words, you don't have to hold the backside on this stuff. Now, I tried to square this up using a regular woodpecker square, but because the blade's so thin, it's just kind of hard to hold. And I thought, wait a minute, I have these positioning squares for just such an occasion, and they work much, much better. So it's very easy. If you don't have a set of these, I'll link them in the description. They're like $20-something, very cheap, and they come in multiple different sizes. But for stuff like this or building cabinets, these are amazing. Now this comes with 4 standard legs. So basically these screw type legs that you can, adjustable height legs with a rubber bottom, but I opted to go with casters that they also have available, 3-inch locking casters, so I can move this thing around the shop. I would recommend that if you don't have a bunch of space and it's not going to be a dedicated setup and you need to move it around, those casters are going to be awesome. Now putting the legs on are very simple. There's 4 of these little brackets here that you're going to be able to adjust, and these also slide up and down because they do have a slotted hole in them that's going to allow those to be adjusted to whatever height you may want on your leg. And then from there, you're just going to put those bolts in there and tighten them down. Very simple. And then you also have the caster that's going to thread up through the hole, put a nut on top, tighten it down, it's done. Also, these nuts you'll notice on the backside have what almost looks like teeth or grooves in them, and what that's going to do is just lock everything in place, basically acting like a lock nut. So putting the router into the router plate is very, very simple. The plate itself actually has almost a target looking system. So if you look all the way around, there's lines marked out on all 4 sides in a circle so that you can see exactly where you need to mount your plate to be exactly centered. And it's very easy. You're just going to line that up. I taped mine down so it wouldn't move. I found a drill bit that fit that hole just right. And then from there, I just drilled those holes. Now, I did have a piece of plywood behind it to prevent any blowout or anything like that. And I also used the little positioning square here to keep that drill as close to 90 degrees as I can. Now, if you have a drill press, it'd probably be best to use that. But if you don't, you can just use a corner of something like that. Very simple to just kind of hold it straight as you drill those holes. You ain't building a clock, just make sure it's not really crooked. Should be fine. And then from there, I flipped it over and I used a countersink bit to countersink those holes so that those screws sit below the surface of your mounting plate. Now once that's done, all you gotta do is mount your router. Very simple. Now I gotta attach the table to the frame. This is very simple as well. All the hardware here is included. I did use a screwdriver because I did not want to overdrive this into this top, because you could strip those out if you use a drill or something like that. So I was very cautious about that. Just use a screwdriver. There's several holes all the way around, and you can see the screwdriver literally goes through the frame so you can drive it straight on. Now it's time to drop the router with the router insert plate into the table, and you want to make sure this is perfectly flush. You can use a straight edge like I have here. If you have a 2-foot level, that'll work as well. And you just use your feel, just rub across there, make sure everything's nice and flush. You can adjust that with those adjustment screws that you installed earlier. Very, very simple, and then you'll put your screws in. Now what you will see is when you put the screws in, it's going to sink it down a little bit. So I did have to adjust them up on each corner just a smidge, but everything worked out good. Probably the star of the show is this fence. Now there's a few steps to assembling this, which doesn't take that long, but you just follow the directions. And I will say on this entire thing, assembling all this stuff, instructions are extremely well written. Just follow them step by step, you'll be fine. This is one solid piece of extruded aluminum, and you're just basically adding attachments to it and mounting it to the table. Now one thing I do like, it has almost a T-glide style fence, similar to what table saws, you know, the cabinet style table saws have, like saw stop and things. I like the fact that you have this lockdown. You can slide this thing back and forth, and when you lock it down, it is square. You don't have to worry about it. There is a tension knob on the other end that you just twist, and that locks it in place, keeps any deflection from happening. It's still square, but if you put too much pressure on it, that little knob will keep that from deflecting. To square it up, very simple. You're just taking some type of measuring device. It doesn't matter what it is. I use a square. Measure this in, get it the same on the other end, and then you tighten these 4 bolts that attach it to this rail. Very, very simple and very easy to do. You can also adjust it with a couple of nylon bolts down there, the tilt on it to make sure it's perfectly square to the table. Mine was right out of the box, but you can adjust that should you need to. There's a couple of measuring scales on this. One right here on top of the fence. You apply that, just a self-adhesive back, or you peel the backing off. Just mark center of your fence, which is 3 feet, so about 18 inches, or right at 18 inches. And then you'll put the 0 add there and go out from each end. You will have to snip just a little bit off of each end. Just with a pair of 10 snips or something like that. The other scale is right here, but it is friction fit, which will allow you, no matter where you put the fence, you can actually set your 0 wherever you need to. That way you can reference back to that. I like that feature a lot. Before we put this through the paces, let's talk about the features on this, and it is packed with features and some really, really nice ones too. First and foremost, the thing I love most about this router table is the fence. It's much like a table saw fence. It runs in a rail. It's square. When you lock it down, it stays true to this miter slot, which is great. And on this other end, there's a little twist knob that just kind of locks this down to keep it from deflecting because it is such a long fence. But I do love that. They've also thought of everything here. On the fence, they have the storage area for those jointing rods, which I really like. They also have a storage area for the starter pin, so you don't lose that, which is great because that little thing will get lost really quick. I also like that on top and on front are standard T-tracks. So if you have a stop block that runs in a T-track, then it will work on this router table. The adjustment on the fences on either side, there's 2 wing nuts on the back. You loosen those off and you can move this in and out so that you can make room for bits and just dial it in however you want. The fence also includes a micro adjustment. The micro adjustment goes to 0.025 of an inch in either direction, so plus or minus, and you just loosen that off and you turn it so it's a cam action basically, so it'll push the fence away from the bit, 0.025 up to that, or you can pull it back towards you. So very, very fine adjustment there when you're trying to dial that just right cut in. Now the tabletop itself surprised me. I was not expecting this to feel this nice. I've never laid hands on any of these Craig router tables like this, so when I pulled it out of the box, that was the first thing that impressed me, how smooth this is. It has a kind of a texture to it, but it's very smooth. It's unique, and I like it. So it's just a really nice premium feeling table. Now the core is actually MDF, which is fine. It has some bracing underneath to keep anything from warping or twisting over time, depending on your environment and things like that. It's a very, very sturdy table. So like on this, you could actually put a shelf in here, or you could build in, I've seen others build in a cabinet or dust collection underneath. There's a ton of stuff you can do with these. They're very, very versatile. Now moving on down, I thought I would not like these casters. When I put them on, I was second guessing using them. I was like, well, maybe I should just use the regular standard feet because I was worried it wouldn't be sturdy. I was worried it would move. It's not. These casters work very well. I like how when you lock them down with your feet, they stop. And it's very easy to lock them and very easy to unlock them. And once they're unlocked, everything rolls very nice. These are 3-inch casters, plenty big enough for this in a shop setting. So if you're in a small space, or you just move your stuff around in a larger space, I would absolutely get the casters. One thing I noticed while using this router table was the ease of access. First make sure that you mount your router so that your power switch and your variable speed dial, if you have variable speed, is accessible on the front of the router table. I did do that, thankfully, but I have been known to make mistakes like that before. So just make sure that is done. I really like how this DeWalt router works in this router table. Because of how this ring raises and lowers the router, it makes making the adjustments from underneath very easy because you just reach under there and you can just twist that and you can see where your bit is being set at. This router, I think, is probably the perfect router for this router table, and I'm glad I've got this one. Now, let me show you what this thing can do and then show you a few tricks that you can do with a router table. First thing I did was try to joint. I installed those jointing rods in the back, very easy to put in there. It only took me a couple of minutes to get dialed in. Once I got it dialed in, a very nice jointer. If you don't have an edge jointer and you need to edge joint some boards, the router table is a good way to do it. All you got to do is set this up and then you're off to the races. One of the greatest things about having a router table is how much you can do with one. Like there's endless operations you can do, cutting operations and edge profiles and things like that. One of the things I like most is how easy it is to cut across the grain dados. So like on this one, I was able to just use this standard jig that I made. There's a whole video on this I'll link to after this video. You can use this little jig. It has a handle. It's just plywood, cut square handle. The holes are for extra clamping options. But you can just use this as your miter gauge because it rides against your fence. And remember, if your fence is square like this one, then all you have to do is push through the cut. And it also acts as a sacrificial piece after you go through the cut to prevent blowout. And so you can make a lot of really nice dados at any point across a board like this using that jig and a router table. Or if you have a miter gauge, you can do the same thing with that. Because we have this standard T-slot, I was able to use the Inker miter gauge to be able to cut different slots as well as a wider dado with this 1/4-inch bit. Next, what you can do is easily do rabbets on boards. And what I like here, I use these Craig setup bars. These are my favorite setup bars. I've had these for years, bought them a long time ago. But you can easily set up an 1/8 inch away from the fence and an 1/8 inch high on your bit, and then I cut the rabbet. Well, I decided that wasn't big enough, so I want to do a 1/4 inch. Very easy to do. Take my 1/4 inch setup, 1/4 inch away from the fence, 1/4 inch high, make that cut. I've got a perfect 1/4 by 1/4 rabbet on the edge of this board. Using patterns with a pattern bit or a flush trim bit is one of the best things that a router table can do. I love the router table for this purpose, especially if you have a shape that you want to batch out. Or in this case, I use this edge guide from Craig, which if you want to do like round profiles or chamfer profiles, this thing has several different inserts that you can swap out. And so you can be able to get different size chamfers or different size roundovers or anything like that on the ends of boards. And so right here you see me just using a flush trim bit. Just a standard, this is from Bosch, just a Bosch flush trim bit. Very easy to do. It's gonna follow that pattern on this router table and it's gonna come out looking nice every time. You can repeat that over and over and over, and that's what I like about those pattern bits with the router table. Now, as far as doing edge profiles like roundovers and chamfers, it's gonna work well because there's a bearing on the top that'll ride on your board, and that's gonna allow it to follow the edge of the board, and you're gonna be able to do those edge profiles very easily. First thing I did was did a fairly good size, I think it's a 3/8 inch roundover on a board. You can see that it really rounded it over. Then I took one of the guitar trays that we make and I was able to put that roundover on the bottom of that very easily. And you can see here that I also tried the chamfer bit on the guitar tray as well as on this standard 1x6 here, and it come out looking really nice. It's just where these shine. If you're doing a lot of edge profiles, you want them all to look extremely even because of the surface it's referencing on. You don't have to worry about your hand router tilting or anything like that. This is going to give you a really nice clean finish. Let's talk about dust collection. I've been impressed with the dust collection on this. I just hooked up my Festool dust extractor to the port in the back using a little adapter. As you can see, when I was making any of the edge stuff against the fence, like jointing or doing the rabbets, you can see that there was almost zero dust coming out of there. It was collecting all that dust, which I really do like. Now, there's only dust that really come out of there is when I was doing those dados or the edge profiles, which is gonna happen. There's really not a lot you can do about that. And then on the floor, there was not a whole lot of dust down there. It was pulling in most of it through the dust port, which I really like. I think they did a really good job here with the dust collection. Now here's a trick you can do on a router table that I don't know that I'd want to do with anything else. If I needed to cut a slot down the center of a board, in this case I'm making a jig, and so I need to be able to put a bolt through there so it can slide up and down. You can use a router table to do that very, very safely and very accurately. First thing you want to do is set up your router table fence, and you want that fence enough distance away so that the bit's going to be in the exact center of your board. Once you do that, then you're going to set up stop blocks on the left and right side of that bit so that you know where the slot will stop. From there, all you have to do is get some double-sided tape. I like this tape here, I'll link to in the description. And then you'll take a piece of scrap, in my case a piece of plywood. All you have to do is put the board against the right stop block, ease it down onto the cut, and then move it all the way to the left until you hit your other stop block. You're going to repeat this process until you get all the way through. I'm taking about 1/8 inch passes here all the way through, and now I have a board that has a slot in it and I can make this jig using a router table that I wouldn't otherwise been able to make with any other tool, not safely and easy like this. On the crosscut jig you saw me use on this router table, it's very, very easy to make. First and foremost, you don't want to try to push that board across that bit without something supporting it, like a miter gauge or this jig. So it's going to be a lot safer. I'm just going to use 3/4 inch plywood here. This is about 12 inches square. You want to try to get it as square as possible. I'm going to use my crosscut sled here to make this jig square. Then from there, diagonally, I'm just going to cut a 3-inch piece of plywood and glue that down across this board. Now you can drill a couple of holes in there for extra clamping. That's what the holes are for, but it's not necessary unless you just want to do that. Once the glue's dry, you've got a crosscut jig that you can use on a router table, and it worked really well on this Craig table. Now, is this a perfect router table? No, nothing's perfect. There's always room for improvement, so I always give my 2 cents on what I think. First and foremost, I really wish they gave us a couple of these red inserts in different sizes, mainly because my roundover bit wouldn't fit in there on some of the other ones. I had to use the really big opening, and I would just prefer if it was a little closer. I'm sure you could buy some different sizes, but I wish they were included. I'm spoiled because I have the Craig Precision Router Lift in my router table so I can change bits from on top. That's one thing to keep in mind. You'll have to drop the router out to change the bits. It's not a big deal. You just drop it out, set it on top, change the bits, put it back in. But doing it on top, being able to raise and lower everything from the top just has me spoiled on the Craig Precision Router Lift, which has all that controls on top. But I think this is a fantastic option for the price because a router lift, a really nice router lift from any major company are very expensive. So being able to mount any router into this plate is a fantastic idea. And I'm glad they did that. That way it keeps the cost down so you don't have to also incur the cost of the router lift plus the router table. I don't know what I spent on my router table when I built it, but I guarantee you it was pretty close to this, if not more. After the fence, the router lift, the dust collection parts and pieces, the drawer hinges and slides, and the whole process and the time it took to build, I would have been, I think, probably way ahead if I'd have just got something like this at the time. So I'm glad there's options like this out there. Now, who is this for? Well, I think beginners or people with limited time, or you just want to buy once and be done, not have to worry about taking the time to build a router table. When I built mine, like there was a lot that went into it because you have to basically route down into the board to get where the router plate's going to sit. Like all that has to be exactly right, and that takes time. It also takes time to build something like that, and by the time you incur the cost of the hinges and the drawer slides and the router lift and the fence, like it all adds up quickly. Plus the time investment was probably about 2.5, 3 days of building that thing. When I built this one or put it all together, I've probably got about 3 hours, give or take a little bit, setting everything up, bolting everything together and getting it all dialed in. About 3 hours versus 3 days. Plus everything comes in the package. The router lift, the fence, the tabletop, and the stand that you can modularize, build on to yourself with a cabinet and things like that. I think this is a fantastic option for those who just want to be able to get something that's going to be nice and it's going to last them for years and not have to worry about trying to build one themselves, making sure everything's all flush, because this thing was super easy to dial in. I don't know, I'm impressed. If I could make this thing myself, if I could tell them to do something different, this is what I would do. First, include a stop block in there or two. 2 stop blocks would be fantastic. They could be aluminum, very inexpensive, just to have when you get this, because I use stop blocks on my router table often. Now you can use things like these screw clamps. They make really good actual stop blocks, but having one integrated onto the fence would be nice. The other thing I wish that they would include a couple of more of these red inserts at different sizes, because like my roundover bit just didn't fit in there. I wish we had one that was in between the big opening and the medium size opening. Other than that, I can't think of a lot I would change about this. It's really good. It's really nice. It's a nice router table. Some local woodworker is going to be very happy. One cool thing is Craig does offer plans on their website. Not a lot of people know that. This stand is one of those where you can, basically there's plans available so you can build a cabinet inside there. They have all the cut lists and all that stuff, so that's pretty cool too. This might be the perfect router table for beginners all the way through advanced users. Seriously impressive. If you can budget one of these, you'll have endless fun with these and be able to basically make anything you want, to store anything you want. It is a 3D printer. I went with the Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon. I purchased this one about 6 or 8 months ago. They have a less expensive model that's like a couple $100, all the way up to this model. So you can really, depends on your budget or how much you want to invest in one of these. But I have been able to make some of the coolest storage and organization products with this. That's why I bought it, is because I was trying to get everything organized, especially for like custom parts like PACKOUT inserts to store tools or bits, or even parts and piece organizers. The options are endless. There's tons of files out there on the internet that you can purchase or download for free. I'll link to some of my favorite ones in the description where I get a lot of these files at. I don't design these things. I did design one. I designed a CA glue holder that holds all of my CA glue. That file's available if you want to download it on my website. These things are so fun to have in the shop. There's only one other tool that I've had more fun with than this. Is a CNC. Now, a lot of people aren't interested in CNCs, but a lot of people are. I got the Shapeoko 5 Pro 4x2. I think it's the best CNC for small shops. In other words, space saving. It's only taking up like 3 foot by 5 foot-ish amount of room. This thing has been absolutely amazing. I have created some of the coolest stuff for this thing, including organizational stuff, but also money producing things. I've been able to sell quite a bit of product off of this machine, and that's where these things really shine. I think they're really good for production work. If you're making trays or templates or custom work, putting custom designs and things, this is where this stuff really shines. I think a lot of people underestimate the amount of money you can make with a CNC, but even if you don't want to make money, if that's not your end goal, they're still massively fun to have to make custom products for your family, your friends, or even customers. If you like this video, there's more right there. You gotta go check it out. Seriously, like, it's a lot of cool tools that you're gonna miss if you don't go watch the video. Click that box, get you the big old virtual fist bump.